Hello, everybody. I am back from the hospital, as some of you may have read about over this past week. And I don't sound quite like my usual self, but I am here to talk treasure. And with us this week, again, are Mike, Snarboo, and Braunle.
So yes, this is not deja vu. It just so happens to be us again because we are all fans of the subject in question. At least I hope
Super
we
fan.
are. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a secret bonus point.
And also, we realize that Discord has soundboard functionality, so this is going to fly way off the rails in really short order. Be warned.
Can they actually hear that is the question. Did they just hear that nice, wonderful golf clap?
That's
Oh,
good question. Did they?
you know what? Hang on. Okay, I think it's playing, although, like, you know, having to deal with this sound and the sound in the stream at the same time is not an accurate barometer, but, welcome, everybody, to the Clown on Mike stream. I am Dynamite Mother. Oh, Jesus. I'll let Rob take it from here.
Yeah, I'm going to have way too much fun with this soundboard if everyone can hear it. Problem is, there's no gongs.
This might end up being more of a. Sorry, this might be more of it, and end up being more than of a curse and a blessing. I'm gonna be laughing too much.
Well, we'll see, I guess. All right. So, where should we begin?
From the beginning.
Yeah.
We'll start from the 8-bit days of treasure, before they even existed.
Well, yeah, some history would be in order here, wouldn't it? But before we start this, everyone can hear everything? I'm looking over to Bette to
Indeed.
see if I get a confirmation.
And hey there, Word. That's a good game, although I think almost every Ace Attorney game is good, so I hope you're having fun with it so far. What? That's...
Yes.
I was being sincere, you...
It's called a test, Mike.
Oh,
Well,
no,
this sure is
that's
testing
no
me,
good.
I'll say that.
Well, of course it is.
Boy, howdy. By cracky.
But I believe Bette just
Constant.
confirmed that she could hear it.
Oh, dearie, dearie, dear. Oh, no.
So, anyway. Well, first of all, let me welcome everyone who's stopped in, including my guests, for being here.
No, thank you.
Well, I'm just glad I could actually be here to do this.
Absolutely.
So, Word, you said some folks sound hot on the mic and others sound kind of soft. Who sounds soft?
Probably me, but I made sure to turn this knob up on my mic to the maximum, so...
It might be me as well. I'm not using my good mic. Unfortunately, I do not have access to that at this time. There is a good mic, however, in this, yes, the duck. There is, in fact, a good mic, though, in this stream, so that's good enough for me.
All right, well, as long as I can be heard pretty clearly, that's good too. Especially considering my voice is kind of going a little bit.
Yeah, that would be Snarboo then. Sorry, Snarb.
Well, let me see if I can't turn it
Oh,
up.
great, now I'm too high. Excellent, fuck.
I wonder if I can turn it up on my
Okay,
end.
okay. I think I turned my gain down a bit. At least I hope I did. I don't know if there's any other method besides this knob on this mic and... Knob.
Okay, I set mine to 150 in Discord's thingamajig. Did that help at all?
Oh, cool. Nice.
That's
Yes,
a good
thing
question.
it looks like is good.
What is it, dear?
Oh, I sound better. That implies I could sound even better, so we'll inch it forward a little bit.
All right.
Okay. Okay, 175 now. That should hopefully be good. If that's too loud, I can always go in between. And hello, Sharon.
Hey, Sharon, what up?
Sheer. Let's see.
Less
Yep,
volume,
sure enough,
more
she's
Clarity. Okay, so maybe I need to get closer, yeah.
All right. How do we all sound now?
I was going to say, hey, GVG, but I just realized that's Braunle, so...
How does Braunle sound, though? He hasn't spoken up very much.
I think I sound great.
I think you do, too,
You know what?
sir.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Well, at least I hope I do.
Oh, you sound fine to me, so.
Okay.
Anyway, just take a second here and point out the nice graphic that Betty did for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I really appreciate this. It's very nice.
I wanted to
Yeah, absolutely.
wanted to use
Great.
as many of those English phrases as possible in here. So if it looks a little crowded, sorry.
Is that background
great.
also... Is that background also from Radiant Silvergun?
It is.
Yeah.
That's
I
when you're
believe it
flying
is,
over
yeah.
the city, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
stage two.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Damn Skippy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a stage 1 in that game? Because all of the leaderboards seem to imply that they skipped stage 1.
Oh, no, there is, but it would be a spoiler to mention where it is.
Exactly.
Oh, never you mind then, and we'll get to that anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how much we want to spoil, but if we don't, I'll tell you after the stream.
All right, that's good.
All right. Anyway, so let's kick this off with a little history here. So, sorry, hard time talking. Treasure, as you may or may not know, actually spun off out of Konami. Back in '92, some of the team members who worked on games like Contra 3 and Super Castlevania 4 and Axlay decided they wanted to do something else. Konami rejected it, and then they ended up basically forming their own company and signing on with Sega. And that's when they pitched the idea for what became Gunstar Heroes, aka Lunatic Gunstar, or some other name they came up with.
Yeah, that was it, actually.
But before that happened, Sega did give them a contract to go ahead and work on Ronald McDonald, the game.
How did they get the license for that? Because previously, I think prior to that, there was Virgin's McKids and Global Gladiators, I believe, which is the unofficial sequel. So kind of interesting it jumped companies there, but we got a better game out of it.
Yeah, and there was also...
I was going to say, that's as much a sequel to the Treasure game as Blaster Master 2 is to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the whole McKids Global Gladiators thing, I think that was something that Virgin came up with.
It was very Western, and unfortunately, I think Tommy Tallarico is involved, who is currently an extremely controversial figure. But it's a whole other thing, so...
Hey, Great White North. Sorry you're not feeling great.
Hey, great.
I'm right there with you.
Oh,
Yeah, you feel better.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
You too, sir.
Start feeling better. But yeah, share, that's great. But anyway, when they got the contract to do McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, about, I think, 3 months into that project, they started working on Gunstar Heroes once Sega gave them the okay. So...
Oh, so it's a Trojan Horse game, essentially. It's like, yeah, we can make the best Ronald McDonald game you've ever seen. How about this other game instead, though?
Exactly. So, even though they finished McDonald's Treasureland Adventure first, they wanted to go ahead and hold off releasing that until they had Gunstar Heroes done, because they really wanted to make a big impact, and I would say they did. So, now I first became aware of Gunstar Heroes when Braunle had rented the game when he had his apartment, and he was telling me about it. He's like, "You got to see this game."
Yeah.
And
There was no way that you were not going to be able to see that game either. That was a given.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad I did, because that game was incredible. I could spend the next 2 hours just gushing about how great Gunstar Heroes is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fight me about it.
Exactly. So why don't we, Mike, would you like to go?
Sure. Oh wow, we're actually highlighting the Oh wow, that's so cool. We get to highlight the individual pictures. Holy crap.
Oh, you're up then.
Okay. Well, there's Hetty. What? That is so neat. Holy shit, Betty, how'd you do that? Anyway. So, let me start off by asking, has any company had as fucking much of a Grand Slam inaugural game as Gunstar Heroes? I really can't think of anyone who just nailed it so right out the gate. I mean, certainly they're not... The team in question who made it is not lacking in experience. This may as well just been a Konami game back in its heyday, but... Wow, like... Some may argue this is still Treasure's best game, and I think I would as well. I know it's not the most original answer, but my boy howdy, just still blows my mind to this day. I'm just like watching footage of it on the side, and even just the quote-unquote basic first stage, pink stage, is still really wild and all over the place. Man, what else can I say about it?
Well, there's certainly a lot that the rest of us can say. Who wants to go next?
Yeah.
I suppose I can go next, if we're going in clockwise order for this one.
All right, Snarboo, you're up.
So, interestingly, this wasn't the first Treasure game I played. I actually played McDonald's Treasure Island Adventure. However, truthfully, I don't know how I discovered it. I just noticed it in the rental store. It showed off what... It has a really good cover. The U.S. cover is maybe, okay, it's not as true to the actual design of the characters, the anime stylings, but it's a good cover. It really sells you on it. And it shows off the fight with Orange, which is one of the best fights in the game. And also, that was highly inspired by Edward Randy. And really, there's a lot to love about Gunstar Heroes. And one of the big reasons for that is it seems to just throw the kitchen, it takes the kitchen sink, and then it throws another kitchen sink at it, basically. It's just got so many elements going at once. And that sort of typifies every Treasure game I have ever played, with maybe 2 exceptions. Is that all of them have these really great systems. They always hook you from the word go. Great presentation, like the intro for Gunstar Heroes, fantastic. The menu screen for Gunstar Heroes, that's just pure vibes. I could sit there and spin that logo forever and just listen to that bassy tune.
You're not kidding.
And, that's the thing about it, is like, I knew that I could just tell from the cover the game was going to be interesting. I just didn't know how interesting it was going to be. I don't know if my brain could process it as how old was I? I think it was between the ages of 8 and 10. And I don't think I was ready to process that. But what my brain was ready to process was the fact that this game has very great anime stylings. I was an anime kid, a very early one. Even at the age of 6, I was already watching anime shows and such. And whenever they would come on, I remember stuff like Tekkaman Blade and Sailor Moon, and the early Sailor Moon before Cartoon Network got it, and a bunch of other stuff. My dad would sometimes rent stuff. I seem to remember seeing Robotech at some point, but that was just mind blowing. Going from, okay, these games look really cool, or you have all these nice 2D games of the era and whatnot, to wow, this looks just like an anime, and I'm playing it. It's such a good time.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. All right, Braunle, since you were the one that introduced me to the game, what drew you to it originally?
I had to say the art style, just the fact that it had anime inspiration, and then I think we had heard about Treasure before they actually started releasing any titles. I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I remember. I remember seeing them mentioned in a magazine at one point for Gunstar.
Yeah, we kept up pretty well on the news around for stuff like that, and so we kind of expected it to come out, I guess. And then when it did, I mean, knowing that it was from ex-Konami employees, I mean, I think we knew that we were probably going to be pleasantly surprised anyways. So, once I got it, it's just absolutely blown away. It's Treasure and most of their games. Of course, I haven't played all of their games. I played a good number of the games, but of course not all of them. But from what I've played, I mean, they'll always always hold a special place in my heart for games because they just, man, they blew it out of the water like from day one.
Yeah, I can't argue with that one bit. I just remember coming over to the apartment, and you're like, okay, check this out. And you turned it on, and it was just like, wow. Holy damn. I mean, what is this crazy?
It's like, yeah, it's like it took me and like it grabbed me and kept me in from start to finish. I mean, even though I wasn't really aware too much of what the storyline was, and then of course doing a little bit of research. From what I understand, most Treasure games there isn't too much of a story, anyways. But from what there was, it didn't matter. I mean, the gameplay was awesome, graphics awesome, music phenomenal. It was just so good.
Yeah. I remember trying to describe it to people as like, it's like Contra with a little bit of Double Dragon and some Mega Man-like character designs all rolled into this really awesome package.
Yeah.
And just seeing some of those,
that's a good.
Like, they made the Genesis sit up and beg, and it felt like they weren't even trying. They were pulling off shit.
You know what else is cool? What else was cool was to as we played these games, we paid attention to how they took advantage of the hardware.
Right.
And how like I don't know. I was listening to somebody do a documentary over the last couple of days saying that they took advantage of the hardware better than Sega, who created the hardware. And
yeah.
That's definitely something. When you can get your developers together, that I don't know. How do they do it? It's just crazy. Geniuses.
Thinking on that point you just made, Braunle, did anybody at Treasure previously work on the X68K? I think Konami did have a few games for that system, didn't they? Or no, they were mostly the MSX. That was their thing. But
they did. I'm just curious if
they had. Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, they did have a presence on the 68K because of Castlevania X68K, which we got over here as Castlevania Chronicles, and a couple years prior, they also did a remake of, I believe, Nemesis 2 on the MSX called Nemesis 90 Kai.
I think that was actually farmed out to another company. I think.
Okay.
But they did.
That wasn't the mobile phone game, was it?
Oh no, this was a full-fledged computer game, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, the subset of Gradius games on the MSX is a spot of knowledge that I am rather lacking in. Although Nemesis 2 did get actually a smoothed out remaster, so to speak, on the Gradius collection. On the Salamander collection on the PSP. But
I will never understand the Gradius nomenclature there.
Yeah, no, it's confusing. Oh well.
Well,
anyway.
Just to let you know, Konami did actually port some Gradius games to the X68000, just not Nemesis 90 Kai.
Alas.
But whoever did good.
That they did. The Gradius stream is not now, though, but...
yeah, that's coming. That is still coming.
Anyway, I said so very little about Gunstar. I think I should elaborate a little more... to the extent that I don't get gonged, at least, but it's not a gong, but okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so I didn't have a Sega Genesis until 2002. Very shameful of me, I know, but while it was more than a decade old at this point, at least Retro Collection was still more than viable in these days, which... 2 decades later, watch how fucking dystopian everything is now. But I digress. There was a Funko Land in just a few towns over, and they were awesome, and they carried a lot of games from the 3rd and 4th gens. And it was from there that I actually got a secondhand Genesis first. And they had a plethora of Genesis games, loose carts, unfortunately, but they were all very inexpensive. And I decided to pick up 3 to start. One was the first Sonic, because, for better or worse, that's kind of a given. One was the first... We're probably not going to have a Sonic roundtable, at least not if Rob has anything to say about it.
It would be called the Spin Zone, actually.
Yeah, probably.
But the second one was the first Streets of Rage, which is still a rad game, even if it's maybe a little outmoded. Yep, valid. And the third one was Gunstar Heroes, just because some random guy on the internet who I listen to for reasons I'll never understand thought it was the 3rd greatest video game ever made. So I figured this was a good start. That's Rob, by the way. But I was just fucking blown away by it. Excellent introduction to the system. Like, man, what else can I say about the weapon fusion system, which I swear inspired Kirby 64 several years later, and maybe a few other games of that sort also, but many boss fights, of course, the 1 against 7 force being the most titanically epic out of all of them. So many great set pieces, with Black's Dice Palace being a real humdinger. And one of my favorite things is that it totally subverts what I think is usually a rather boring and blatant move for padding in video games, which is just to throw a boss rush at you and have you refight most of the bosses that you've done. And Gunstar Heroes, the final stage, does have you refight all of the big bads, but almost all of them have different machines and or completely different patterns of attack. Except for Orange, but you fight him in a different arena than last time, and he has some new moves, so that's still pretty different. But yeah, Pink has a new machine, Black has a new machine, Pinky's goons you fight on their own, and Green just fights you mano a mano, and he's a very annoying bastard to fight. But Gunstar is just a massive thrill ride from start to finish that I can barely think of any criticisms for. Like, if I want to be nitpicky, the 2 I'd say is that Black at the end of the Dice Palace is a very anticlimactic boss. Although, considering what you just went through, maybe that's a mercy. And the penultimate stage, the shmup stage, is, I think, a little slow to me. If there's one part of my game that I could say it's not my favorite part, it's maybe that. But it is still good, and those are the only criticism I can come up with. Gunstar's just tops. Glad I got to play it when I first got my Genesis. Yay, I kept it under time, I hope.
I only have one criticism. I have one less criticism than you of Gunstar Heroes, and it starts with the number 5. That is stage 5.
Oh, you're not fond of that one?
Why is it so long? And I have no idea why. I don't know if you mentioned that one, actually. You mentioned the shmup stage.
Yeah, no, I can kind of see what you mean about the 5th stage, but I kind of like it. It just feels, it's like so nakedly simple. It's just one long line full of enemies. But I don't know, just something about it feels very empowering to me. Like, I just tear through these mooks with whatever weapon I've been using all this time. I'm kind of a wuss, and I prefer the laser homing combo, which, yeah, I guess that's a little bit of a bush move, but now, I like it personally, although it kind of helps that there was a homage to it in Mischief Makers. That's basically like the same idea for a stage, but I played that game first, so. But I do actually have a semi-relevant question.
Okay.
Why does the second in command of the enemy forces, whose name is apparently Smash Daisaku, why the fuck does he look so much like M. Bison?
Oh, but he has a beard. You see, a beard I did not notice until like
That's
the
a
last 5 years.
His
Yeah.
beard's a
I
lot
thought he
more
had a weird
prominent.
collar.
His beard's a lot more pronounced than Gunstar Superheroes, but yeah, it's just like glued to his very dictatory outfit. It's such a bizarre. He doesn't look like any of the other characters either. He's just weird somehow.
He's basically M. Bison by way of Inspector Gadget with the extendo limbs. And
yeah.
That is my big criticism of Stage 5 is if you're an 8-year-old and you're not the best at video games, Smash Daisaku is going to send you all the way back to Stage 5 a couple of times.
No,
You could call it a reverse Braunle, if you will. choking on the final the boss of a stage.
I mean, he looks ridiculous, but he is actually pretty tough, and yeah, you are really worn out from the gauntlet you just went through, so I can see that being a pain in the dick.
Anyway.
That could have maybe used at least one checkpoint, I'll give you. Okay.
Well, I see we've got a couple new people in the chat as well. I see the Tech Stark is here. Welcome. And
hey, Tex.
Also, Gambit 500 is here.
Hey, Gambit.
I think we know who that is. At least I think we do.
I do, but I won't use Gambit's real name if he doesn't want to.
It's okay. He's probably going to show up on the show at some point later on.
That too.
Everyone will get to hear his real name then. Anyway, the only other thing I really say about Gunstar Heroes, besides what's already been said, is that not a lot of people know about the Game Gear version.
I know of it, but I'm not sure if I've ever played it.
I had a Game Gear. I never saw a copy of that in the stores. I was much like Mike, and I got my copy secondhand, but much sooner. It would have been the late 90s, 97, 98. Once the Genesis had started to die down, maybe 99 when I got my copy. So,
Well, the reason you probably never saw it.
It's much shorter.
Wait, what'd you say, Chris?
I was saying I heard it's much shorter than the any of the other games.
Yeah, and it never got released outside of Japan either, so.
Oh, that would do it.
Yeah, kind of like the Dynamite Heady for the Game Gear. Well, that got released outside Japan. It was the Master System game that didn't get released outside of Brazil. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay.
So, I have played the Game Gear Gunstar, and it is decent. So, you could certainly do worse. And yeah, there's no denying who Gambit 500 is.
Hang on, I'm seeing some footage from the Game Gear version here, and they cut out Black's level. Wow.
Yeah, space considerations, I think.
I mean, if there was a stage that really took up a lot of space, I can understand why that would be the one. But
yeah.
Is it just the Dice Palace that's been removed, or just Black has just been excised from the game entirely?
Yeah, no, Black's been completely booted out. He's not even in the end boss rush.
Dang.
Yeah, which is kind of a shame because his stage was one of the most innovative in the Genesis game.
It's kind of my favorite level, even if it is also a bit laborious. But that's just so cool that every different space is its own boss fight. That's nuts.
Yeah. Especially that one that doesn't let you use weapons.
That one is tricky at first, but I've gotten a bit of a rhythm down to fighting him. You just kind of basically stand a certain length from him and goad him into doing like his split kick, then just punch him in the stone abdomen or whatever.
Yeah.
What is that thing supposed to be anyway? Because in Gunstar Superheroes, they made it a teddy bear that rises from the trash.
Yeah, it's called Curry and Rice, and it looks like some sort of golem, weird pile of rocks with just a few tufts of businessman hair or whatever. I don't know how to describe it.
It's like a mutated salaryman or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest pain in the ass boss to fight in that gauntlet is the minion soldier, which is a very tiny soldier that somehow takes a lot of punishment and like throws a lot of explosions at you, and he's really hard to hit.
I actually look forward to fighting him.
It's a fun fight, yeah. He's just kind of a dick, also.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we all agree Gunstar Heroes is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like there was ever going to be a difference in that. But let's move on to the other game that they did at the same time. McDonald's Treasureland Adventures. That was one that I just kind of avoided originally. Because...
Yeah, I've never played it.
It was McDonald's. It's like, oh yeah, I want to play a Ronald McDonald game, sure.
Oh, come on, Rob.
Well, considering I own a copy now, so...
I was the right age for that, and that was the first treasure game I saw in stores, so I have a big soft spot for it because, I have kind of a soft spot just for the Ronald McDonald's, the paraphernalia, whatever you want to call that whole thing anyway, just because it's just such a weird way to market burgers to children, but yeah, it's just a good game. If you don't know, it is a platformer starring everybody's favorite fast food clown. Japan really likes him too, so I'm not surprised that they probably had a lot of fun working on it. But it's besides another game which I'll talk about later. It's probably their least pretentious game, I guess you could say, if you want to argue that any of Treasure's games are such. It's just very straightforward. It's a platformer. Probably the most innovative thing it does is giving you a really good columns clone as a bonus stage that you can use to earn extra lives and health pickups and such. It's got the typical treasure stylings with the story. It's got kind of more of a almost anime styling, or I guess I don't know what you would compare it to really. But it's just definitely a very Japanese take on the franchise. Great stage design. I'm not sure what to really say about it other than it's just a nice, pleasant game. Oh, wait, there is actually an interesting gimmick with the boss fights, actually. They did actually throw in a treasure gimmick with that. You can't normally hurt the boss until it actually takes one of your magic gems, which is what they seek. All of the bosses in the game want your magic jewels. Don't think about that too deeply. But once they get a bite on them, don't think about that either. Then you can actually attack them. And it's actually kind of a novel concept. It has a risk-reward system there because you have to budget your health. And for a game that's really easy, that's actually kind of a novel sort of concept. It does also have a lot of treasure charm in terms of the stage design. Every stage, it may not be a boss rush, but it's kind of it's not quite a situation rush either, like Strider, but like the first thing I think of when I think of that game is one of two things: either the train stage, just the entirety of that train stage, or the bit with the sumos in the city. That is just such a great little set piece there, where they can raise and lower the streets as they do their typical, shuffle.
But I'll say, you know what it actually made me think of more than anything? It was almost like it was like a prototype for Dynamite Heady.
Yes, yes, because he has his little grappling hook, which is it's his handkerchief up his sleeve, and he grapples onto stuff almost the same way as Heady.
So I've had it now for a few years. I got it before the whole pricing boom happened, so it was still pretty cheap. And it just struck me as being much better than Mega Mac the Global Gladiators.
Not that that's hard, to be fair.
True.
Yeah, it's significantly better. It's a lot easier. If that's an issue, then you can always crank the difficulty up, I suppose. But yeah, it's probably the best McDonald's game there ever was and ever will be, because I don't think Ronald's ever coming back.
Yeah, probably not.
Wait, why isn't he?
Because in retrospect, the basic explanation is that they didn't want to essentially advertise like fatty foods to children. Like there was an uproar about that about when you and I were getting into our 20s, and thinking on it, that probably made me eat a few too many burgers than I should have as a small child.
I see.
Well then, Mike, do you have anything you want to say about McDonald's Adventures in Treasureland?
It is a pretty alright game, but I admit I'm not sure if I could call it among my favorites that Treasure has done. Nachi mentioned that it was sort of a contractual obligation. I could actually kind of understand that this was just the more perfunctory title compared to their passion project in Gunstar Heroes. That being said, for just being like basically an art commission, so to speak, it still is much better than it has any right to be. But my memory of this one otherwise is a little rusty. I can't even remember if I even actually beat it.
Okay, there's an easy way to know if you beat the game. Do you remember the asteroid stage, especially the bit right before the UFO shows up with the weird music?
UFO.
Because if you do, you will not forget that bit because there is a specific song that plays that is really. It's still kind of it spooked me as a kid, because I was a small wee child.
Oh wait,
but
isn't that the music that plays with that like graphical logo test also?
Yes, the really spooky like hidden debug menu or whatever it is.
Yes. Unfortunately, I remember that music more for that. I don't actually remember it from its stage context. So no, I really can't remember if I have beaten it or not.
Okay, well, the final stage is fantastic. That bit in the game is really great when the UFO actually comes and like abducts you. And the whole asteroid segment is really interesting too because a lot of stuff you wouldn't think is alive and will kill you. I died so many times. It's like, wait, this isn't like Earth. This isn't Earth rules at all. What the heck is going on here? And I'm sure Ronald felt the same way after dying like 3 or 4 times.
Okay, I definitely haven't beaten it because I'm looking through footage, and the penultimate boss actually is made up of spheres that were later just dead-ass reused in Dynamite Heady.
Yep, you are absolutely correct.
Yep.
It's the weird tree that laughs and cries and screams at you. That stage is just gonzo. It's great.
Fucking yeah, no, I really actually need to beat this sometime.
You do.
Shame that I haven't in time for this one.
You pointed something out here. Their first game was a licensed game, and much later on they would do more licensed games. But Treasure typically never dropped the ball. Even with their contractually obligated stuff, they always put in their an A effort, if not A plus or S rank effort. And it shows with this game. This is a pleasant game to play. I don't have any complaints about it. I can't think about anything they could really do better. Especially when compared against the other crufty McDonald's games that exist.
Yeah, it was definitely. I will say that even if I was a little flat speaking about it, I do remember liking what I played, and certainly it is a defiance to what I believe was a sort of set-in-stone notion that licensed games at the time were almost always guaranteed to suck. Now, we know that wasn't always the case, like with Sunsoft's Batman and Atari's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, among other games. But, a game based off of a corporate mascot of all things, by all rights, should suck. But leave it to Treasure to craft something actually pretty damn good for what it is, right?
It's like they took what Data East had done a few years earlier with Donald Land.
Donald Land. Yes, and also, kiddies, he's known as Donald McDonald in Japan, and I have no idea why.
That's a good question. And one that'll probably stay unanswered, at least tonight. But
I could look it up on Wikipedia, maybe.
Braunle, you said you hadn't played this one, but have you seen anything about it, or anything you want to just mention in brief? Or
I have less than zero experience with it. But from what I saw, watching the documentaries on Treasure and everything, and listening to some stuff, and the limited stuff I've seen in the past of it, if it was like a precursor to, precursor to Dynamite Heady, that's got some value there for it. But how really hardcore can they get with McDonald's marketing to kids?
Yeah.
But still, like you said, or somebody said, they took something like a mascot or whatever, but it was Treasure who took it and did something good with it. Not just anybody. So, that's got some value to it.
Yep. And I see word has pointed out that they call him Donald over there because it's easier to say.
Yeah, I figured that was the case. It was something to do with the syllables, or when they were transliterating his name.
They don't have a clear R sound in Japanese enunciation. That's right. That's why there's all that infamous confusion about L's and R's in quote unquote English. So yeah, that tracks. That's pretty interesting, I gotta say.
Exactly. So what say we?
I gotta ask though, who's more popular in Japan, Ronald McDonald or Colonel Sanders?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh wow. Maybe I meant. Is anything McDonald's related, like a national Christmas pastime? Like, because I know fried chicken buckets are.
That's a good point. You're right.
They do love the Colonel over there.
Japan fascinates me. I'll try and visit someday.
Yeah.
But my God, plane tickets are just fucking ridiculous to there.
And welcome in Rex Warden. And yes, Colonel Sanders by far.
Righto. So, yeah, Sanders. Yeah, that tracks.
Yep. So
I'm getting inspired. I'm talking about all these mascot fighters. That's going to be my next game.
There's been attempts at Mugen. I don't know how successful they've been, but there's a really good Donald McDonald in that one, and I say that specifically because it's based off the Japanese Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, there's this one meme where like several Donald McDonald commercials were set to a certain song from one of the Toho games. And that was like a really, really old, like, Nico Nico Doga mimetic video that, my God, it must be like at least 15 years old by now. But
yes,
that somehow made him a even more mimetic favorite worldwide, and yeah, did kind of inform his unofficial fighting game characterization. So,
yes, and just to address Sharon here, Colonel Sanders is not Japanese originally, but they love them over there.
Yeah, that you know how these things sort of catch on, like
yeah,
it's like that Weird Al song "Genius" in France.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I think we've had enough of the fast food for one night. Let's move on to something a little more substantial, namely Dynamite Heady.
Eddie.
Yeah, Mike's gonna have to take the ball and run here because his icon is actually the titular character from said game.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and flip it over to Mike.
Yeah, I quite love Dynamite Heady. I mean, from jump, the game is just so ridiculously colorful. Like, every color you can think of that gets used in the Genesis palette, and even several that maybe even haven't used before. It's just looks fantastic. There's so much character in Heady's sprite, and like many of the enemy sprites as well. The whole premise of everything actually looking like a puppet show, like the backgrounds are clearly like painted boards or whatever. They just so thoroughly commit to it that just it's the little touches like that are amazing to me. But yeah, there's just a lot to like about the game overall. Some pretty neat stage designs, if not increasingly rough later. Heady himself gets a lot of different heads that power him up, like one that makes him really fast, or one that shoots out a lot of stars automatically. And he keeps getting pursued by what is apparently a bear, even though he really looks like a cat to me.
Yes, everybody thinks Trouble Bruin, aka Murayama, is a cat, even though his theme song specifically says Kuma, which you never hear in the US version.
Yeah, well, Bruin is apparently a pun on bears also, but... And also, for some reason, in the Japanese version, he looks purple and demented, whereas in the Western version, he looks brown and pissed off.
Yeah.
I guess
Bruin is hardcore.
Yeah, exactly. They did what Kirby does to Kirby. That I said that poorly.
What Kirby does to Kirby.
I mean, he will, right? Anyway,
Kirby absorbs himself. Does he gain twice as much power?
We should have a Kirby roundtable. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just such a colorful game. Really neat bosses. Excellent fucking soundtrack, it might, hot take, actually be my favorite out of all of Treasure's soundtracks. Just a lot of personality in it, lots of awesome boss themes. That fight against the wooden dancer is just, wow, that thing's just so awesomely animated. The really creepy baby head fight, the ridiculously difficult gatekeeper fight, but just so badass and epic. There is just so much else I could say about this game, but I don't want to get gonged off the stage. So, if anyone else would care to talk more about Hetty, go for it.
As noted, you don't hear all of Trouble with Bruin's theme song because the U.S. version of the game is the first Treasure game, I believe, to have a degree of meddling going on here, and it was all due to rentals. It has all the anti-rental traps they've been throwing games.
Yeah.
You start off with no continues. It's harder to get continues. Everything deals more damage, or you have less health. I forget how they handled that. Boss fights are much harder. They have way more health. It's kind of a nightmare version of the game in a lot of ways. They also excised the story for whatever reason. I actually don't mind that because I think I've seen a long play of the translated version of the Japanese version, and truth be told, it's not that interesting a story. It works better as pantomime, I feel like, because it's pretty obvious what's going on.
Yeah, for the most part, except the thing with the smiley is weird and not very obvious.
Unfortunate, if I recall, yes.
But yeah, I guess I gushed too much about it to start, but I wasn't even thinking about the differences between the bullshit difficulty spike.
Yes. There were some other localization changes though that were for the better. I mentioned the story, but that's kind of neutral. But they changed all of the stage titles to movie and TV show puns. Like you have Twin Freaks, you have Mad Max, you have there's a bunch of other ones that were really good.
Air Wars.
Yes. Oh man, I hate that tower stage. That tower stage, by the way, Spinderella, that was my game over point every single time I rented that as a kid. And then by the time I was getting a little bit better at it, actually no, I think at some point I just game genied it and just blasted through the game.
Valid.
Like, you know what? I'm just gonna skip stages, see all the bosses, all the good stuff. Go to Dark Demon, kick his butt. He's surprisingly easy for some reason.
He's
even in the US version.
Yeah, well, I think he's still a challenge, but compared to the aforementioned Twin Freaks, which is easily the most bullshit fight in the entire game, fake difficulty out the wazoo on that one. It's arguably
they messed
even
with
worse
that.
than
They
the
messed with that
Gatekeeper.
fight. Oh, sorry. They messed with that fight even more in the US version, I think, than any of the other bosses. First off, in the Japanese version, his entire ear was his hitbox. Now it's only his eardrum, and secondly, he moves even faster. Very tough boss fight. However, despite all of that, Hetty is actually a eminently beatable game, even after all of that meddling.
I have done it.
Definitely worth it, just for all the weird jokes and stuff, the secret bonus points, which are... You know what? Treasure invented in-game achievements. There, I said it.
They did, yes.
I'm brave enough to say it. I will say it every single time. They invented that. Except they should have been called secret bonus points from then on.
I wish. Yeah, just the voice that says, "You got a secret bonus point," really amuses me. Sure.
All
and also,
the voices are so good. You
got another try.
It's like Hogsars, cheering you on there.
As far as secret bonus points go, there's this little weirdo called Beano who's apparently a stagehand that shows up as several bonus points. Like, you do something unorthodox and Beano shows up, and then you just hit him with your head off the stage, and his abuse is your gain. So, yeah, it's and also, if you manage to beat 4 of the secret bonus stages, there are more than 4 at least. They can be frustrating later on, the basketball game, so to speak. But if you manage to beat all 4 of them, and write it down, good old pen and paper, if you write down the 4-digit code that you get from that, you face a very interesting post-game final boss, to say the least, that just totally goes ham with how meta the game is about what it is. So... it's some cool stuff.
Now,
should I mention the boss, or I don't know.
Well, I'll just say this was a game I didn't really get into until later on in the 90s. So I kind of missed it when it first came out. But what about you, Braunle? Did you get a chance to play it back when it was originally released? Or?
That's another one that I never. I don't know why I never got into this game, or I never actually even played it. I'm actually surprised that I didn't. I knew about it, but I never ever took the time to pick it up or rent or anything like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing Die Hard Game Fan magazine. They did like a huge spread on it at one point.
Yes, I had that issue. That was I could say a lot of good and bad about Game Fan, but that's what got me into them was those big, huge issues they would do for one specific game. And the Hetty issue was great because they also showed off, like I think it was before it got translated. So some of the there were some other localization changes made that you got to see kind of behind the scenes because they were showing it off in the magazine. Like one of the bosses is a doll in the Japanese version, but it's a robot toy in the American version.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of weird little localization changes like that. And as we also mentioned earlier, there was a Game Gear and a Master System version of Dynamite Headdy, which are both surprisingly close to the Genesis game. I mean, sure, they're scaled down in spots, but for the most part, they're actually really close. Not a lot of crazy effects and stuff, but still.
Yeah, I'll consider. I mean, the Genesis version did kind of push the system's capabilities to its edge. I'm just seeing a lot of parallax scrolling in this one stage alone, but
the cave stage where you're on the 3D platform, that was really good.
Yeah, that's just incredible how that works out. Also, Clothes Encounters is another stage name. What was the one before Mariama? Flying Game. Ooh, that's a little iffy nowadays.
Oh yeah, unfortunate.
Ooh, Fatal Contraption. ETC, yeah, they've got a yes. Oh yes, perfect use of that. Yeah. Like the game is as clued into 90s film culture as the critic was, practically, and it is a shame about the increased damage you receive and the lack of continues in the Western version. So if you have to seek out the Japanese version for this one, go for it, but it is definitely worth playing. And with how collecting is today, the Japanese version probably is the easier and cheaper one to find, so...
you might be surprised about that.
Oh, no!
Shockingly, sorry, I keep interrupting.
Oh, no, you're
shockingly,
good.
Dynamite Headdy is actually currently, last I checked, one of the more affordable treasure games. I think it goes for about $80 complete, which is actually pretty reasonable for a game of that vintage and of that quality.
That's so fucking sad. Jesus Christ, I did not pay
Like
$80.
Crusaders, I think, actually the cheapest, but we're not on that one yet.
Well.
So.
No.
Yep, and nothing of value was lost, not being a dick.
Yeah. We'll get to that one soon enough, but I think the next one we need to hit is the first one we got royally screwed out of over here.
Yeah.
Which we learned about from Game Fan. They had a cover on it. They had a little section on that one too, and I always wondered why we never got this game.
And that game, of course, is Alien Soldier.
Yes, that big quote you see in the middle of this stream here, visual shock, speed shock, sound shock. Now is time to the 68,000 Heart on Fire. That is actually on the title screen of that game. I don't think they even translated that a little bit better in the European version, which actually had a marginally improved translation. It's still not that good, but it's nominally better.
that whole game's story, though, if you read the whole thing, it's just like, what?
It is off. It is so off its shits that it is in another dimension, like 3 doors down from wherever God lives. It's just.
Would you say it's their Superman?
I am going to fucking kill you, sir. I mean, I poor choice of words on my end, granted, but like, god damn it. Yes, thank you. It's like something about how you were like some sort of criminal who was also a Birdman, but then you died doing something nice, and then you reincarnated, as the
But
Birdman.
then your evil ghost becomes your villain and your nemesis. It's
yeah. And there's like a teenage girl who also goes evil and becomes the most bullshit boss in the game. I can't even. It hurts my head so much, but it's also just the sort of batshit gonzo crazy ass lore that we don't get in video games today. So I do kind of admire it for how little sense it makes.
True.
Now, interestingly, there's been some discoveries made in the past few years that might have actually made the story a little bit more sensible. Notably, there were a bunch of cutscenes and even a couple of bosses. Only one of the bosses has some rudimentary code. It moves, basically. It doesn't actually do anything else. But there's a cutscene right before you fight Epsilon, the giant metal eagle, your former evil version
your
of you.
Ghost, yes.
Your ghost. Your
Whatever
evil
the
metal
fuck it
screaming ghost. Where you were riding up an elevator, there was some text. Can't remember what it translates to. I don't know if it had been translated yet. But there were fighter jets actually, flying upward to attack it. And then they get completely destroyed by Epsilon. So it would have set the stage for the fight a little bit better. There was one for Seven Force as well, the girl that turns into Seven Force. She rides down an elevator and interacts with something. And I wouldn't be shocked if this game was a little bit rushed because, it's towards the tail end of the Genesis's lifespan. I wouldn't be shocked if they were maybe gearing up to work on the Saturn at that point.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'm not sure this game's story would have made any more sense even with the cutscenes, but I guess that extra level of garnish would have been appreciated. Also, it does suck that maybe a boss or two were cut out, but there are already 30 bosses in this game as it was, so I guess losing one isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Now to say something here, I saw that Word commented that they picked Alien Soldier up for the first time and mastered it within 24 hours to perform a no-death super hard clear for a contest while functionally deaf due to a broken headset.
Yes, I read that.
I think Word is better in video games than I am. I admit I never beat this one on the quote-unquote super hard difficulty.
Yes, I'm the same way. I have only
easy. You may lord that one over me anytime you like in case you feel the need to do so. And also, I find it rather hilarious that this game's only two difficulty settings are super hard and super easy.
I think, what is the major difference between them? Is it damage you take and
how many super hard has, I think there's a damage thing to it, but the main difference is that super hard has limited continues, so that would be the really big deal breaker. Super easy allows you to continue as much as you want, so I have attempted it in super hard before, but that motherfucker on top of the train who turns invisible almost always stops me. Now, I think I have really not beaten that asshole on super hard, and that really giant purple fucker before that didn't help any either. God damn it.
Yeah, you're just supposed to avoid that one.
Yeah, I know, but it sucks. I hate it.
Well, I'm going to say for the record that I've never completed that game on any setting, and I did actually own an original copy of it for a little while, the original Japanese Mega Drive.
Wow. Cool.
And I got it for so cheap too. It was like $50. Yeah, good luck getting it for that now.
50,000 maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But Jesus Christ. It was just one of those things. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And then the great crash happened and I lost it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a guy doing custom repros at one point about 20 years ago. And he made a small run of Alien Soldiers, designed all the artwork and the manual and everything. So it actually looked like it would have been released by Sega back in the day here. And he sent me one of the last ones he had. I still have it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
What do you have? Anything to say about Alien Soldier there, Braunle?
I played it. I never, like you, I never did beat it on any difficulty level. Graphically, it was just like everything else up to that point was totally impressive, and the music even more so. I don't remember why I didn't try to go through it. I have a tendency to back in those days. I had a tendency to rent multiple games. Mm-hmm. And if I had my sights set on something over something else, if I had rented like maybe 1 or 2 games, I'd have my sights set on something over something else. I might the other rental might go by the wayside, so maybe that's what that was. But I don't know. I never did actually get too far into it, but I enjoyed playing it for how much I did.
Yeah, kind of makes me wonder where you were able to rent it from.
No kidding. Couple more things I want to say about
because it was never released over. That's right.
Exactly.
That too.
Yeah.
Yes, my introduction was emulation. I emulated it as soon as I could find it because I remember the magazine article for years, and I'm like, "Where's the game with the giant Robo Chicken, Sega? I am waiting. I have been waiting since the 2nd or 3rd grade for this game."
Yeah, I think learning about Alien Soldier from, of course, Rob's site, the OPCFG, was like one of the first sort of pulling backs of the curtain on how many great games in the 80s and 90s that we just did not get over in the West, and I was raging pissed when I learned that, wow, this game is so cool. Why the fuck did we not get it?
This and Terranigma are sticking points because Europe got both of those.
That's another good point, yes. Yeah. Damn it. But I'm checking, and the giant purple organic battleship was after the invisible asshole, so my bad.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since I played this. Snarb, I think you said you had difficulty with the spider boss.
That's usually okay. So the trick with that one is, I guess we should point this out. This game is a boss rush. If you did not know, pretty much everything in this game is just fighting bosses.
Like
every
you
boss
thought
is something different and
yeah,
unique.
You thought that Gunstar Heroes was full of bosses. This game is just like usually less than a minute of stage, or even if 30 seconds, and then it's right on to a boss fight. I think the longest that the stages ever get is maybe when you're in the dark hallway area, but I don't quite remember.
That's actually one of my favorite sequences in the game. But
I think
it's right before the. Yeah, I think that's right before you fight the giant spider. Which,
I love the music in that place too.
So yeah, there's the spider boss. Well, before you meet the spider boss, you fight a giant moth, or I think it's either a moth or a fly. I suspect it's a moth, but anyway, it flies around. It hits a giant freaking spider web, and you're just like, uh-oh. And what happens? Giant spider comes out, bites off the giant robo-moth's face, I should add. And then it fights you from the bottom of the screen while its baby slowly drags the only platform you have into the abyss. Now, Word says it's actually one of the easiest bosses in the game. That's the thing. Yes, you can fly. If you hit double jump, you can actually hover in midair, but you can only do it once. If you get hit, you get knocked back into the pit. And for some reason, my brain just can't. The fly is absolutely easy. Sorry.
Yeah, no, the spider's fucking bullshit.
That is definitely one of those. If it was an arcade game, that would be what you'd call a quarter trap. If you could actually rent the game, it would be a rental trap. But yeah, it was. That's one of those points where the game's not messing around. And I think right after that fight, is that when you're on the elevator and you fight Epsilon?
Yep, it is.
Pretty much just high octane. From there.
Yeah, you'd think the game would go easy, but then like 5 minutes later, you're fighting 7 Force Kaede, which is easily the worst part of the game for my money.
They made 7 Force, one of the cooler bosses from Gunstar Heroes, worse, and yet it has 2 less forms. It only has 5.
So it's like I appreciate the dead ass reference. I mean, you fight Melon Bread just before a joke boss from Gunstar Heroes, and then you have a retold version of a much more famous Gunstar boss, and yet instead of being a joy to fight, it is just a fucking kick in the nads. I can't explain why. Forms are just so much worse. The final form that you fight in a undercurrent underwater that keeps dragging you counterclockwise. Your control really fucking sucks in this fight, and it just keeps laying mines everywhere. This game allows you, if you pause it, to actually slow the game down if you want to. The only time where I take advantage of that feature is the final form of Kaede here. It just sucks so fucking much. God damn. Word actually likes 5 Force. I respect that. I mean, it still is a cool boss. It just feels so much longer than 7 Force did, even if you fight it on hard difficulty with all 7 forms in it. I don't know. Yeah, the tiger sucks too. Right.
Artemis Force, as it is known.
Yeah.
What do I have to say about oddly the game gets it's smidge easier, I feel like, after 7 Force, because then I think you fall after the big battle station, and then it's from there it's pretty much just a gauntlet to the final boss, if I recall.
Yeah. There's one boss in the last stage here that I like to point out, which is a giant robot wolf bounty hunter with a machine gun arm, wearing a rather fancy hat, riding on top of an even bigger mechanical horse. Its name is apparently Wolfgunblood Garopa, and it is the coolest fucking thing ever in video games.
Yes, you have Wolfgunblood, and then you have his steady steed, Gallop.
Yep.
Whenever I saw that, I was like, man, is this a reference to Brave Star? Like really, because it looks so much like the toy robot horse from that toy franchise.
Wow.
I think maybe only Rob and Braunle know what I'm talking about there.
I remember that. Yes.
Yes, so do I.
Actually, I think they had a cartoon of that.
Brave Star? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember watching that.
Wow.
I remember watching the cartoon more than seeing the toys.
Yeah.
I never saw the cartoon, but I did see the toys. It's kind of weird how that works.
Hey, Eugene just popped into the chat. Hey, dude.
I see that.
Hey, Eugene's here. All right.
Just one more thing I want to mention about Alien Soldier, and then I guess we'll mostly move on. I don't know, this game just really interests me a lot. It is kind of unwieldy and unbalanced. Like, it is mostly a very hard game, but the final boss, it's invincible unless you make liberal use of a feature you probably haven't used very much in the game up to now, at least if you play in super easy like a tyro like me. In which case, it is actually a very anticlimactically kind of disappointing boss, in my opinion.
It's one of my favorite boss fights in any treasure game, just because of how huge it is.
Yeah, and no, it looks really fucking cool. Yeah.
This is before they could, they could zoom out a little bit, before they had sprite scaling and hardware, so they could actually make you even tinier. But I just remember, when I emulated that, I naturally blasted through it on save states. I loved that final boss fight so much, I plopped the save state right before it and just practiced on it endlessly. That's how much I like the fight with
Z-Leo is the final
Z-Leo.
boss.
Ooh. Yeah. Just comes out of nowhere, like 11th hour twist. Hey, I'm actually the real big bad, I guess. You killed the other big bad.
Yeah, no, he wasn't mentioned. For what little weird-ass story crumbs he get, I don't think Leo was mentioned at fucking all.
No, he is not.
I do find him a little disappointing, but he does look really cool, and he is hard if he keeps abusing the move where he throws your elevator really high into the
he can do that like 3 or 4 times in a row. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll just say that, my experience with Alien Soldier, I like the game well enough, but it is a little too boss rushy for me.
That's fair.
I don't play it that much, but I still wish I had my original copy.
Yeah, it's not my favorite of the Sega Genesis treasure games. Actually, it's the game I would put on the love-hate pedestal. It wants to be my favorite game, but it does some things that annoy me, like the weapon switching. Why do you have to stop and then spin through this really slow wheel? That's not the only time they do that in a game, by the way.
Oh yeah, that does kind of suck.
I get it's kind of a risk reward, but this is a game that really demanded the 6-button pad, and they're like, we'll fit it all on 3, and I appreciate that, but no, do better.
Yeah. But as far as the game itself goes, it's also the same way I felt about Contra Hardcore. It was like, a little too much of a boss rush kind of thing, not enough run and gun.
But I prefer Hardcores over Alien Soldier if I had to choose, truthfully.
Yeah, they're both good for what they are. But let's move away from Alien Soldier and get...
one more thing.
Okay.
Sharon, there is actually a tiger earlier in the game, too. Apparently your boss is known as Z-Tiger, and he transforms into a giant blue tiger with huge-ass claws.
the real alien soldier starts there. Which
Yeah.
is Zai Tiger or She Tiger, however you say that.
He's a pretty fast boss, but if you have good enough reflexes, he's honestly not too bad in my opinion.
Yeah.
But move on, Rob. Go ahead. Feel free
Yes,
to
by all
sign
means.
off
Let's
on this
move
one.
on. Before Treasure fizzled out on the Mega Drive because it was near the end of its life, they did release this really unique fighting game, which doesn't look that great, but in motion it's actually really good. It plays really smoothly, and you can actually have up to 4 people playing at the same time. And that was based on the Yu Yu Hakusho anime. So I guess my question is here: who else has played this besides me?
I've only played it once. I've only played it once, and it was years ago, just to see if I could try out everything that Treasure had made that existed at that point that I could get my hands on. It's a very ugly game. I seem to remember it controls smoothly, and it's certainly better than the SNES Yu Yu Hakusho Fighter, but it's otherwise probably the most disappointing Treasure game I have played in memory. Is that it's just not, it's maybe the one game they didn't put their magic touch on as much.
It looks better when it's in motion, but that's, it depends on how hardcore you are into like versus fighters, I guess. Depends on what your experience with the game is going to be. I first saw it at a place called the video game, I think it was the Video Game Warehouse in Orange City. The owner actually had it there, was running it on his Mega Drive, which was pretty cool to see. And it was like, oh, well, does this ever come out in America? No? Well. And then I forgot about it for a decade.
When did you see that?
I think that was after you went to the Navy. Yeah, but Sean had it down there, and I remember him running. He's like, you guys got to check this out. It's Yu Yu Hakusho. And I'm like, yeah, it looks pretty cool. Okay. Not coming out here? All right, what else is new?
It did come out in Brazil, though.
Yes, Brazil, the same place that also got Dynamite Heady for the Master System.
The Master System is fucking huge in Brazil. The last game released for the SMS officially was actually a port of Street Fighter 2 of all things.
Yeah.
And it was only in Brazil, and it was made in 1997! That's fucking crazy. Like, why even at that point?
I remember hanging out with Gambit one day. Just, we're at his house, and we're channel surfing. And this, some kind of a Brazilian game show comes on. And, the guy's announcing the prizes, and, of course, we have no idea what he's saying. All of a sudden, the curtain opens, and there's a Master System sitting there. And
wow!
And it's playing the Star Wars theme at the same time. We're like, what the hell? And it's like, really, a Master System? It's like, I guess so. And I see Bill 85 Gamers here, who is extra late.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, we're almost out of the Genesis stuff.
Yep. I guess you really only have my opinion on the Yu Yu Hakusho fighter, Makyo Toitsusen. I definitely pronouncing that phonetically. I have played it a few times. I am probably maybe the biggest fighting game junkie of you four, possibly. Braunle might be really into them also, I'm not entirely sure. I know Snarb's quite into them at times.
Yes, I think I've played almost every 2D arcade fighter there is. I have opinions on those, but that's probably better for another stream.
Yeah.
And I used to be.
Gotcha. I still kind of am into them, but it's kind of a high and low tide. I'm getting hyped up for Street Fighter 6, but that's neither here nor there. So I have played this one at some points. It's okay, but I don't know, something about how it controls is a little wonky to me. It's got some pretty damn good music, but and it also apparently allows for up to 4 players at once to fight each other, which I guess makes it a little bit of a distant precursor to Super Smash Brothers or what have you. But I don't know diddly shit about Yu Yu Hakusho. The only thing I kind of know about it is that it was apparently the anime that made tournament arcs ridiculously popular and overused in manga and anime. If it wasn't that, it was Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know.
Just to address something that Heihan said. Said here in the UK, rental stores still rented Master System games into the mid-90s.
Cool.
Yeah, Sega was pretty big in most of the world except Japan for some reason.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't ever recall seeing any place that ever rented Master System games here. Although I wish they had.
That's a shame.
Yeah,
Yeah, I concur with Word, actually. If you get a chance to watch the anime, I got into it a little bit late because it came on Adult Swim, and, I didn't, by the time I actually knew about it or had access to it. And it was actually recommended to me by a friend who was also huge into anime. I mean, everybody was at that point in time in the 90s if you were in high school or beyond. But it's really good. The tournament arc is absolutely fantastic. It is the tournament arc to end all tournament arcs, basically. There is a reason why that is the gold standard. It's wonderful. Never was able to finish the series and get to the second tournament arc, however, which I believe is also absolutely amazing. It somehow ups the ante.
Yeah, there's a lot of anime I need to catch up on. This one will definitely be on my list. I have heard nothing but good about it. The only characters I know off the top of my head are the Togure brothers. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, I think it's Toguro.
Toguro.
Yeah, they are very, very evil.
Yes,
super evil.
Apparently so. There's the younger one is really big and kind of alien looking. His skin's made of metal, and the elder one is more diminutive, but he's able to shape his body into anything. They're both playable in this game, so that is pretty neat. But I don't really have much else to say on the game itself. It disappoints me that there's not really much reason to play it in single player because there's not really any special final boss in the game, which is kind of lame.
It would be the younger Toguro. That form he has in the game is his final form. He actually looks just kind of more like the Terminator, if I recall, before that point, and then he just goes absolutely full on
Well, you think he'd be the final boss, but I'm seeing here that it's Kuwabara who's the guy with the pompadour, right?
Oh yeah, he's rivals with Yusuke, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where instead of having an actual final boss, you just fight a rival character, which I always thought that was kind of lame, to be honest. Sorry, Street Fighter Alpha. So it looks okay, but I'm kind of picky about my fighters, and except for the 4-player thing, this one doesn't stand out so much to me. So it is what it is.
Yeah. But rather than spend much more time on this one, on the Genesis, Treasure kind of went out with a whimper instead of a bang.
Alas.
Now is my time to shine.
It's Light Crusader time.
Yes, and I'm going to be honest with you. This is my this is what I would call my deeper cut fave of Treasure. I had to name a game that was not one of the big ones, this is it. I don't know why, because I had the same reaction that Mike did. I kept trying to, pester him to play it, but he would not. And I respect that. But when I first played this game, okay, so on the outs, the presentation is totally untreasure-like. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the flash, quite the same flash, the pomp, the circumstance that other games does. It just looks like an action RPG, a Western one at that. It looks like it could have been an Ultima game or something like that, or along that ilk. I wouldn't be shocked if they were inspired by that, and maybe they thought that would give their game a unique spin, but I digress. This is, besides McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, this is the least pretentious, the least interesting Treasure game. And despite that, it's still actually a fantastic game, and it's interesting for no other reason than Treasure just said, hey, we can make an action RPG for this system that's about as good as any other action RPG for the Genesis or even the Super Nintendo. Is it amazing? No, it's maybe not as good as Terranigma, Soul Blazer, or just thinking of the Genesis. Oh gosh, I want to call it Story of Thor. That's the European name. I believe.
Illusion of Gaia.
Oasis.
That was the
Beyond Oasis. That's on the Genesis. That's probably the best action RPG for the system.
Yeah.
But it's still very, very good. It still has some unique Treasure qualities to it. Notably the magic system, which is almost a direct nod to our good pal and friend Gunstar Heroes, because you get 4 elements. You can combine them. But unlike Gunstar Heroes, you can combine all of them You can combine them in any way you want. Now, granted, this leads to a lot of spells being useless. I recommend looking up a guide if you're going to seriously get into this one for the good magic. But yeah, it's got an interesting magic system. Basic combat is hack and slash. I don't think you really learn any super interesting things, but really what makes this game shine to me is that it's an isometric game that doesn't feel like total crap to play. Like, it kind of does what, it's very similar to Landstalker in that it's an isometric action RPG. But I believe Treasure did the sensible thing by making it so that down is down on the screen. It's not like down left or up left or anything. It feels way more modern in that respect. You actually move very, very quickly. There's a lot of weird jokes in this game. It just has a lot of charm beneath the surface, and the more I dug in, again, my initial reaction was like, this isn't very Treasure-like. And I put it away for years. I emulated it pretty early on. I'm like, hey, a Treasure game I haven't heard of. Wait, what the heck is this? 10 years later, it's like, okay, I need to actually see what the deal is with this. So I do, and I really like it. It's probably my secret deeper cut fave of anything Treasure has done. Is it the most amazing action RPG? No, but it kind of illustrates what could have been on the Genesis. We should have gotten more RPGs. There was no reason the system could not have done it or handled it. I think even the PC Engine got way more. But it's kind of bittersweet in that respect. It's a bittersweet sort of swan song for the system in that respect. Also, you eventually, there's this bit here, I'm going to spoil it, but there is time travel involved, and yes, you do get to fight a tank as a knight in shining armor. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, no, that's the part I remember the most from what I admit I looked ahead. I unfortunately didn't play that far, but yeah. Anything else you want to say, Snarb? I can take the mic.
Yes, actually, there's one thing I forgot. It has a physics system. It might be one of the first it's quasi 3D, quasi 2D to have a full-blown physics system. Not quite like, you can knock over a soda can kind of thing, but there's a lot of box stacking, but it feels kind of natural. There's actual 3D polygons. The doors are actually 3D polygons, a la, almost is Resident Evil-like in a way, the way they open, like, I think the game pauses for a second and then the 3D doors just swing open. It's very cool. There's a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, I forgot about that. There's a lot of 3D graphics in this, actual polygons. They're flat shaded, but they are there. The bosses are all like multi, like 3-dimensional or 2.5 dimensional, however you want to say it. It's a very charming game. If the presentation puts you off, definitely try to stick it out because it does go places. There's also the Hidden Cat Village, which has one of the best theme songs in any game I have ever played. I actually dropped it in the call before we did this, and I believe Rob gave it a chuckle emoji.
Yep. And Song's pretty impressed with how the graphic looks here, too.
Yes.
It is really awesome. Also, Hoi Song. I know I said that in the chat, but I should be
Yes, hello.
So, yeah, from what I gather from Snarboo, if I were to compare Treasure's games to film composers, if Gunstar Heroes is Treasure's John Williams, then Light Crusaders, they're Elliot Goldenthal.
That went over my head a little bit, but I'm going to take your word for it.
That goes over everyone's heads because, no one knows who Elliot Goldenthal is until I mention what movies he's in. Actually, the Elliot Goldenthal of ... is the most bizarre running gag I keep trying to mention everywhere, and it never really sticks. But, you're weird, Mike.
Because no one knows what the hell you're talking about.
Exactly! That's why I keep saying it.
Now, I gotta say, I just always felt Light Crusader to be really kind of subdued. It was just like, whereas the other games kind of came up and smacked you in the face, this one really didn't. But, yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. What about you, Braunle?
Yeah, neither do I. I don't recall even playing it. I knew of it and everything. I was aware of everything, but I never played it.
Yeah, it was just kind of there. And then it was gone. And that was it for Treasure on the Genesis.
Yeah, I mean, I did play into it farther than I have before a week ago at Snarb's urging. And, it's not bad. I do think it has a good deal of merit, and it is absolutely a slow burn And I do take Snarb's word that it gets better and crazier the longer you go on. But I will say your character's attack range kind of bugs me. It feels a little inconsistent unless I just suck. I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually the sword combat that really lets us down. I feel like it should have only had maybe the magic system. You know, like you're like a wizard with a wand. Maybe you use the wand to knock enemies back or something like that instead, or a warrior mage, which you essentially are. But yeah, for a game where you have to hit things with your sword, it does not feel good to do that. Most of the time, you're going to want to be spamming meteorites at things.
Yeah, so that basically brings it more in line with a Western RPG, which never has good combat ever. I'm being a dick. I'm being inflammatory, but I sure hope Betty's not watching. I'll shut up.
You're lucky she's watching a movie.
Okay, cool. I'll just stealth that through then.
Oh, I got her attention.
Okay, so don't repeat what I just said.
Repeat what I just said to you.
Fuck you. What? Hey, no, I beat Alien Soldier. I beat it on super easy, but I still beat it.
Oh,
Come
nothing.
on,
If
give me
only we could
some
unlock
credit.
super medium mode, which is the worst of both.
Yeah. Anyway, before this goes to beans. Gotcha. Beans. It's all about the
Net
beans.
net currency.
Beans.
Before this flies too far off the rails, too late, I'm sure. Yeah, I am kind of a stickler for combat. I am primarily first and foremost an action gamer, and I can be a snob for when, like, the fundamentals... If the fundamentals of how you beat up and or kill enemies in the game doesn't meet my standards, then I do tend to be fairly dismissive of it. I just think you should have been given a longer range, or at least a less fiddly hitbox, especially if you're diagonal strikes. I had a lot more luck doing your guys... Isn't the hero just called David or something like that?
Yeah.
So David.
His name is David,
Yes.
and he's. Here's the funny thing. Okay, so you have this generic guy named David, right? His his name is Whedon, and he rules over the Green Kingdom or something like that. And I'm like, I bet you do, King Weed.
420.
Is it Green Mile or something? I forget the name of it, but yeah, I don't think they intended that. I think it sounded much cooler in Japanese, but
420 was
got
a
a good
couple
joke
weeks
out of it.
ago, unfortunately. But
Right.
but yeah, it's an all right game. It's one that I think I could stand to play more, but I think it's also one that I just kind of have to sort of force myself to like more. So, Sharon has asked a poignant question that Rob will probably use as a transitioning point. So,
Yes. In fact, we're done with the Genesis. We're moving on to the Saturn now. So,
68,000's heart is now dead.
yeah. But you now have to be attitude for gains, and warning, there is no refuge.
oh yeah,
What game that's from? I'm waiting for a nice point to segue into that.
the
actually.
cat icon though.
Well-
Song asked about the cat icon.
We're going to get into that in a little bit, but first I think we need to go into the game that Treasure initially worked on for the Saturn, Guardian Heroes.
What a surprise! I just beat the one route of that game tonight in an effort to actually bone up on Guardian Heroes.
And bone we will. That's something Principal Skinner said, I think. So
Yes, it is.
Oh boy.
young man, you need to do some serious boning.
Oh, that was great. All right, well, if we're going to keep this to about 2.5 hours, we're going to need to kind of go through the Saturn games pretty quickly.
Fortunately, there's only 4 of them.
Yeah.
So, starting with Guardian Heroes. I mean, I owned that game back in the day, and I really liked it a lot. I had never finished it, but I really liked it. So, hell of a beat 'em up. Mike, anything you'd like to say about it that's not going to last for the next hour?
Give me some credit, man. Poor Mike. Yes. I did really like Guardian Heroes when I was into the Saturn, a system that I got considerably later, and one whose internal battery was dead, so I had to rig up the action replay to save games instead, which was a bit of a laborious process that was easy to screw up. But I ended up pretty much unlocking everything in the game eventually, and somehow... Fuck you! God. I can't even speak straight. But yeah, Guardian Heroes is quite a rad game that is kind of sort of nominally a beat 'em up, but it has like this. It's also a little bit more like a kung fu-esque game, except that it takes place on 3 planes that you can hop over. Very novel idea. Like the only other game much later I can think of that adopted that is Streets of Fury EX on Steam, which is a much better game than it has any right to be.
There's actually one other game too. I actually have some more words, but I'll wait until you're finished.
Yeah, sure. Like there are like several characters. They're all basically straight up like D&D RPG archetypes. Like the warrior, who has the best physical attack, the magician, who has excellent spells, the ninja, who is very speedy, and the healer, who is probably very hard to play if you're doing a single-player game. But you can play 2 players, at least. And also, you have the assistance of the Golden Warrior, this badass skeleton in this huge, bulky golden armor that is completely invincible, and if you're not very good at fighting opponents, then you can just keep running from them and have him do his best to take care of them, so that's really neat. And yes, the server said...
You forego levels, however. Leveling is important, but it depends on which character you play, how you level, too.
Right, that's a good point. And as Snarboo said, there are several, I can't... Cut it out! Damn it. Several routes in the game. I forget exactly like what the flags are that determine where you go. I guess there are like several dialogue options and other conditions. It is a very surprisingly detailed game. Also one that has a versus mode where you can potentially play as every single character in the game, even every enemy, even every boss, and that's just fucking crazy. My god. It really is, yes. I do only have one major gripe with the game. It is a little bit stupid and nitpicky, but I think I've rambled enough for now, so Snarb, you go ahead.
So I had heard about this game. If I had actually gotten a hold of this game at the time, it would have absolutely blown my mind, because yet again, we went from games that just simply had anime trappings, Treasure's earlier efforts, to one that is just a full-blown anime. Having recently watched through a bit of Slayers, it's very clear where the influence for a lot of the designs of this one came from. It's basically Slayers, the beat 'em up, which is surprisingly a thing that doesn't exist. But anyway, I digress.
It doesn't have a character like Naga, though, does it?
I think Serena's the closest. She even uses ice magic.
Right. Except that she doesn't...
You don't unlock her from the word go, or you have to unlock her. She's not there from the word go, if I recall.
Yeah, Serena's the Secret Fist character, and she's basically like the most balanced, sort of like all your powers combined, all of them. She's cool. Yeah. She's really cool. I'll shut up.
But I digress. The thing that stands out to me about this game is that literally every beat 'em up that would come out after, especially in the 2000s, is a tremendously huge ripoff of this game. RPG mechanics. It has the RPG mechanics. It has 2 separate attacks, weak and strong. You have like secret combo moves that you can do either by alternating moves or by doing certain button combinations, or stick moves like a fighting game. The plain combat thing has only been used in I think 3 other games. Notably Panzer Bandits, which is also very good. It's not quite as good as Guardian Heroes, but it's still very good. There is, as noted, Streets of Fury EX, and then there's this game called Viking Squad on Steam, which is a little bit more closer to the basic formula set forth by Guardian Heroes. I mean, you have 2 attacks, magic, that kind of thing. You level up all the stats. There's 4 characters. No secret 5th one that I'm aware of. One thing it does do differently that I do wish Guardian Heroes did, however, is it actually has terrain variation. You actually have platforming in Viking Squad, whereas in Guardian Heroes, every stage is sort of a flat plane to go with the whole idea that it's a fighting game, but also a beat 'em up. And truthfully, that's my biggest issue with this. The stages are all very flat, and also they recycle a lot of them. Like, and especially depending on what routes you take. Like, I know at one point I was like in the same stage back to back twice, and I'm like, but I just cleared this place out. Why am I doing this again? Also, the difficulty, I don't know if it's the best balanced. I don't know if it was balanced differently in the US version, but I had to abuse the 99 continue code for this one, which is you start on easy, you immediately exit back out hitting A, B, C, and start, and then you just continue from where you were. And you actually get a bonus level that way. I played through the game as Randy the Magician. It's actually best to stay back with him. I wanted to play him more as a fighter mage a little bit more than I should have, and it kind of came back to bite me a few times because there are two ways to level up in this game. Mostly killing enemies is the big one, but also just casting spells. And if you're a spellcaster, you can actually gain a cool 4 or 5 levels at the start of the game just by using your strongest skill from the word go, which in Randy's case is a big, huge screw you laser beam. Good times. I almost killed the final boss with that as well, which there are many routes in this game. It uses kind of almost uses visual novel logic. It depends on what you say, and sometimes they jump around, so you could be going one route and then you say something else and then it teleports you to another. There's a big, huge map of it on Game FAQs, but the final boss fight I got was one of the most absolute worst things I have ever had to fight in a beat 'em up, so I like this game. It's not one of my favorite treasure games. Maybe it would have been a bigger hit with me if I had actually had a Saturn at the time and, right when I was in my huge anime nerd phase. But it's a very solid beat 'em up. And the fact that I never realized that every other beat 'em up released after, especially in the 2000s and beyond, ripped it off, It puts everything in perspective. Yeah, it's flat. Yeah, it recycles a lot of things, but there's just so much variety to it. And as you noted, there's the versus mode, which I haven't even touched yet. I'm excited to see what I've unlocked.
Yeah. Yeah, I will agree with you that the difficulty can certainly be mean. Like, last time I played this game, you have limited continues unless you use that code that you mentioned. I just got wiped a lot faster than I remember getting wiped last I played. The most notable difficulty spike also happens with my absolute most hated part of the game. Actually, yeah, let me append this criticism to the entire game overall. There's a good deal of dialogue in it, and none of it is skippable. You can't just press start.
You can speed it up, actually, if you hold down C.
Well, that doesn't amount to a hill of beans when fucking Canon appears. That bearded asshole. No matter what route you take, yeah, Canon's like this evil wizard who is kind of sort of the bad guy until, you kill him, and then whoever you fight at the end takes over. But stupid fucking Canon always goes into this, 5-minute backstory about events in the game that, the story, I do not care about the story in this game very much, and, he just babbles about a bunch of lore shit that I do not care about, and even if you skip his text, it's there are all these slow transitions into scenes prior that just, it's really fucking slow no matter what you do, and then he's an insanely bullshit boss fight. And yes. I fucking hate Canon. So.
Canon is bad. I didn't think the backstory bits were that bad. I actually kind of dig the story in this because, again, it's basic anime stuff. It's not unlike Slayers. You kind of have to have that. It's funny. I watched Slayers just a few months ago. Then came into this and hey, you have the guy who's not Gowry. You don't really have a Lena inverse analog exactly, but you kind of have some other characters that are similar in different ways, shapes, and forms. So in that respect, I actually really dig the big info dump before you fight him, even though he's total bullcrap, because it's very anime, and that's what this game is anime, without any voice acting somehow.
That is a fair point. It also needs a Naga who has large tits and always goes, oh!
Actually, that's the Earth Spirit boss, actually.
Oh, okay, well, then I stand corrected. My memory's rusty.
I actually have fought both the Earth Spirits and the Air Spirits because I got the Kill God route. Pretty good time.
Although you were disappointed that you didn't end up fighting Golden Silver, who is also the final boss of Gunstar Heroes.
Yes, I was very mad about this because you see, Guardian Heroes is actually a prequel to Gunstar Heroes, and it's actually bridged by Advanced Guardian Heroes, which I have not played a lot of. I did not enjoy it. I might have to go back to it if we do another treasure stream.
It's apparently really awful, but let's not talk about it here.
Yeah, well,
it wasn't too bad. I owned it for when I had the Game Boy Advance. I had it, and it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad.
Okay,
It's,
fair enough.
It's one of the better beat 'em ups for the system, actually, in retrospect.
All considered, it's no Double Dragon Advance, but I'll take your word for it, Braunle. I'm speaking shit out of my ass. I'm sure it's not as awful as I got the impression it was.
Okay, when you start talking about that, Mike, I think it's time for you to take a break.
Okay, actually, I could use some water, so Braunle.
Yeah, I might hop out as well. If you guys want to talk about Throwdown over Rakugaki Showtime, now would be the time. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, what about you and Guardian Heroes, Braunle? Did you ever get a chance to play that? Yeah, Guardian Heroes. Did you ever get a chance to play that?
That was. Yeah, that's I had the Game Boy Advance first. That's one you were talking about the just now.
Right, but did you ever have a chance to play the
not
original
on
one?
Saturn?
Ah, okay.
No.
So
No.
you must have been still doing your Navy tour when I had that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
that was what was that? It was like 96 to 99.
yeah. So yeah, it would have been right
Something like
during
that.
that time.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Anyway, I think it's a pretty good game. But there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just something it's really probably good if you play the Saturn version first before you play the Game Boy Advance one.
Yeah. I don't. Well, of course, at that time, I had no way of getting a Saturn, so that took obviously the next best thing. I did enjoy like they were explaining about the when you can jump into and out of the different perspectives of the screen. That was pretty interesting mechanic.
Yeah, that definitely was. I really have not much else to say about it, though, other than the fact that when it became obvious we weren't going to get Golden Axe, the Revenge of Death Adder for the Saturn, instead we got that fighting game, Golden Axe, the Duel or whatever it was called. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's the next best thing? Oh, here's this Guardian Heroes game. I've heard good things about this. And it's like, don't regret this purchase one bit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm not a very good collector, so of course it went by the wayside with a lot of my other games.
Yeah, these things happen. Anyway, before they both left, they mentioned something about talking about Rakugaki Showtime, which was their first PlayStation exclusive, if I remember correctly. Did you ever get a chance to play that one?
I never did. No. In fact, I don't think I ever even. I don't think I ever even knew that it existed at the time.
Well, it never left Japan. And it's one of those unique games where, like, the art style is like everything's done up in like children's scribbles.
I remember hearing about that on one of the videos I was watching today. Yeah,
and it was. I only played it recently for the first time myself, and it's pretty fun. It's basically an arena fighter.
Right.
These things are $8.
I return to what game are we discussing now?
We figured we go ahead and go with Rakugaki Showtime.
Okay, now the only thing I know about that one, I was not able to cram that one in, unfortunately. But the one thing I will say about it is I always get it confused with Rakuga Kids or Astro Superstars, which is the third Sunsoft fighting game. I think Rakuga Kids was Konami, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Well, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I've never played either of those myself, so just Rakugaki Showtime. And it's, it's a fun enough little game for what little I played of it. I did, get, I don't know, about maybe halfway through the game. I wouldn't mind going back to it at some point, but I wouldn't try to hunt down an original copy these days because, as far as I can tell, it's one of their hardest to find games.
Yeah, I barely heard anything about it. Mike did describe it to me at one point, I think just tonight even, that it's kind of like Dodgeball if it was a beat-em-up.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Because he mentioned that you throw a lot of things, which is always a good time. Very Super Mario Brothers 2 if you treasure.
Yeah, at the in exchange for not playing Silhouette Mirage further, I did actually just today. Shut up. Just today, actually finally play Rakugaki, and I only intended to just try it out for a spell, but then I ended up getting all the way to the end of the arcade ladder with the third character, little alien-looking Scrimblow. I think his name's Piton. I looked it up after the fact. Rakugaki Showtime's a real fun-ass game, I gotta say.
I regret not having time for it, unfortunately.
Hey, I'll recommend that you go ahead and play it whenever you can later after the stream, because it is just really, really damn fun. It is sort of almost like a party fighter. I think it allows for several characters up at once, but it's certainly not a conventional fighting game. You go all over this arena, which is often a big square, so to speak, and you do have moves with which you can hit the enemy with directly, but that's almost secondary to the fact that the arena is littered with several things that you can throw at the opponent, and that usually tends to do more damage than your attacks, like bombs and like gravity wells that you could throw at them, and like even big ass ICBMs. It's fucking ridiculous. I'm not making this up. The most powerful thing being and you'll face this on all levels, are the smiley balls, where it's like there are these smiley faces that do a decent amount of damage. You hit an opponent with it, but then they get noticeably angrier as you toss them at the enemy, and eventually they just reach a shocked state where they just go all rainbow and shiny, and if your character picks that up, you do a really powerful special move on them that could pretty much almost end the fight if you time it right. It is a crazy and really awesome and novel idea, and for my first time playing it, I was actually doing really well on the single player, as it were, until I fought this really large woman who no-sold all my attacks and just like dodged everything almost perfectly, and she crushed me so badly that after I lost to her twice, I just had to end up fighting like 3 smaller women who were much easier to beat as a compromise. Apparently, this game has a bit of a dynamic difficulty scaling, like several years before God Hand on the PS2. So, like, if you keep losing at an opponent, you instead just fight an easier version of that fight instead. I guess it's kind of like a sort of shame sort of demotion, so to speak, and I'm not sure if it like prevents you from getting or doing something if you have to go with it, but it is pretty interesting, if not a fair motivation to see everything in the game. And also, like in Gunstar Heroes, you can apparently play as every character in the game, too. I unlocked what appears to be Johnny Mark II when I beat the game. One of the harder opponents. He also thrashed me pretty well, but...
Okay, I have to stop you right there and ask you, can you unlock Johnny Mark V?
No, Johnny 5 is not alive. I'm sorry. Okay, Dyer, do the wah-wah. Thank you!
Well, anyway, it's a decent game from what I played, but let's move on to something that's a little more divisive. Silhouette Mirage.
Yes.
Now, before you go, sorry, but I know you want to talk about this one, your characters from Silhouette Mirage. But yes. I'll say my first experience with it was the US PlayStation release, and I had no idea that Working Designs had broken it so badly. And I actually got pretty far in it, too. But it just got to a point where I just couldn't get any further.
But, yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't blame anybody for sour grapes over that. For you see, my only experience with it was the US PlayStation version. I actually own a copy of it, still complete. I never owned a PlayStation. I only borrowed, and I just had to own that game because it was treasure, and it was actually released overseas. Well, I wouldn't learn until years later that they really mucked with the difficulty. At the time, I just thought it was a typical hard game because Treasure would make games that were hard sometimes. I didn't understand what was going on with Heady either until a little bit later as well. But Suffice to say, yes, they made the game much, much harder than it needed to be, which is a shame because the game already had. Okay, I'm going to call this the quintessential treasure game, not in the sense that it's the best treasure game or the only treasure game, but in the sense that it typifies all the things that are both good and bad about treasure games. Notably, apocalyptic storytelling, Byzantine systems, and typically bittersweet endings or the like. I think there was actually a third one or a fourth one, but I can't
Pardon me
recall
for
what it
1
is.
second, Snarboo. I just want to address something that BL85 said.
Oh, what's that?
He said, "You did good. Definitely don't need a PlayStation 1. N64, baby." To which I say,
Oh no.
So you're giving crickets to Yuki troublemakers?
no, just the N64 itself.
Oh, okay.
I don't own an N64, but I own a few games for it, notably Perfect Dark and the Quake 2 port, which is actually pretty good. But in any case,
that's crazy.
In any case, it's a quintessential treasure game. And charming story. That was the other thing. Anime stylings and charming story. That was the fourth point. This game has it all, and it's a real shame they messed with the difficulty because this might be the most charming game I have ever played by Treasure. It has the wildest story. All the characters are really fun and cute. All the bosses are super memorable. The mechanics, I'm not a fan. I got used to them. It's a game that you don't really get good at so much as it a game that you endure. And you sort of just learn the ins and outs of it. And despite being pretty bad at video games as a teenager, I still managed to beat this and get all 5 endings, including the true ending against the true final boss. I forget what the unlock conditions for that are. I think it's dialogue options or something, or depending on how you beat certain bosses or what order or something like that. I forget, but it's a shame that the difficulty had to be mucked with like this. That should have been an optional change, either a remix mode or hard mode, whatever you want to call it, because the game, this game is what inspired Ikaruga. It is basically a prototype for that because it's called Silhouette Mirage. There are 2 elements in the game, Silhouette and Mirage. One's red, one's blue. One is weak to blue bullets, one is weak to red bullets. Opposite forces cancel out. Same forces just drain your spirit, which is effectively your shield in the Japanese version. And that's where the changes lie with the US version. There's 2 bars, health and spirit. Spirit is, again, as noted, your armor bar. It only depletes if you get hit by an attack of the same type, or if you decide to change the color of your character. You play a character called Shina. She is split down the middle, 2 different colors, and depending on what side you face is what kind of attack you get. So this game is very dependent on positioning. And in the Japanese version, you would only really want to switch sides if you absolutely need to, so you don't drain your spirit. There's not a lot of ways to gain spirit in the Japanese version. In fact, I think you can only get it from pickups. Otherwise, it just drains if you get hit by the same color attack. In the US version, they changed that. They made one good positive change, notably that if you can regain spirit by shooting enemies of the same type. But on the other hand, all of your attacks now drain your spirit. All of them, even your basic gun, I'm pretty sure. So as a result, you have all of these weapons, some of which were overpowered in the Japanese version, but you just can't use them here. You're just going to be stuck with your pea shooter. And your only other option from there is to drain, basically just tediously drain the spirit of your opponents, because you can, that's a mechanic in this. Your enemies also have spirit, mana, whatever you want to call it, that you drain by hitting them with the same color, and you can actually depower them entirely. You can actually make boss fights trivially easy if you just go in and decide to do that first, and then go in and then kill them with the proper attacks. The other thing they did is that even though, so it was bad enough that they did that. They added an ammo meter when it didn't really need it. Secondly, all the weapon prices are obscene. This game has a mechanic called cash bashing, where you grab an opponent and you just beat the coins out of them. And you would go to a store, the Hare's Wares, as I think they call it in the US manual, to buy more guns. And the guns didn't take up ammo in the Japanese version, so your reward for doing that, for actually grinding out cash, was more powerful weapons. But I'm trying to remember, what was the name of the company that localized this?
Working Designs.
Yes, Working Designs, under their ill-advised Spaz label. I'm not joking. You can look that up.
Boy, woof.
In their infinite wisdom, they were like, well, the weapons are really, really unbalanced. Let's make them more expensive, and they cost ammo, and the really good ones drain all your spirit at once, so then you can't attack anymore. And it's like, okay, Somehow I still managed to soldier through and beat it, and it was really worth it because the game is just so damn charming. Like the icon, I chose this character for a specific reason because he's the most funny boss in the game. He doesn't want to fight you. He actually is hiding when you first enter his stage, and then he sheepishly comes out when you're not looking, and then gives you health. And then it turns out, like, oh, I'm not actually a bad guy. I was just given a castle for no reason, and then you find out what that reason is. Some pumpkin-headed dudes, I believe they're Mirage type, come out. They lower a giant, like, curtain and reveal the moon, and it turns out this little guy turns into a huge hulking werewolf, and a really tough one at that. There's some tricks you can do. Notably, you can grab them and then pound them into the ground to knock over the background. The background is actually just a backdrop. It's not even the real moon. He just turns into a werewolf anytime he sees any full moon, which is pretty cute. And from there, you can just pound the snot out of him. But that's just one part of this game. It's just how charming the boss fights are, and they were made brutally hard in the US version.
Yeah.
And it's just a real shame. Other notable boss fights, I love the catfish girl. It is actually like a giant razor-finned catfish with a girl's, like a anime girl's face, and she shoots claws at you, and she says the weirdest lines, and she's just really silly. That's a good one. There's the samurai fight where, like, you raise a ruckus and, like, everybody in the neighborhood starts throwing, like, potted plants at you. There's a big gun that has different types of enemies loaded in it, so you have to keep track of what type they are so that you can attack them properly. You have the two major villains, which I don't remember their boss fights as well. I think depending on what you do, you don't even fight them. I think you only fight them on certain endings. But one of the boss fights is, like, in a giant, like, kitchen. And, like, you have to get certain ingredients thrown into the pot to damage the boss. And it's just, the whole game is full of charms like that.
That's really cool.
Yes, it's treasure at their goofiest. It's what I've dubbed the second in the Treasure Puppet Theater trilogy, the last game being Stretch Panic, which I need to play. It's basically Hetty dialed up to 1,000. If you like the charm of Hetty, you like the visual stylings, you like and you want, like, the absolutely bizarre, like, Byzantine system of, like, something like Alien Soldier, this is the game for you. Just play the Japanese version. Go to play the US version later on. Consider that for super players version of it so that you can get the story in English. I don't know how accurate some of the translation is. I noticed they did not fully translate the biblical references and excised a burning cross from the Hairswear shop for probably a very, very good reason, because that has a different sort of symbology here in the United States. So that was actually a positive change. But I could just gush about this. It's really a hard game to sort of pin down and to even describe. I'm sure it sounds like a confusing mess. It is. But it's worth it just for how gorgeous it is, how cool the characters are.
So basically what you're saying is it's a beautiful, confusing mess.
Yes, I would in fact say.
So why don't we hear from someone who has a different viewpoint on the game? Mike?
Okay. Well, first off, allow me to ask a vaguely relevant question. Is it worse to get no export or a bad export?
I have wondered that myself, because I have to wonder, if we had never gotten this game in English, would we have later gotten a more accurate translation? Well, given what has happened with some of their other games, I'm going to say that, this might have been the only chance we got, and I'm glad we got it, because
that's the dichotomy of working designs. On the one hand, the stuff they translated, we probably would have had almost no chance of getting over here. Well, maybe the Lunar games would have been published by someone else, because RPGs were very popular at the time. But this is absolutely one we would not have gotten if it wasn't for Working Design's efforts. And on that nominal level, I'm thankful for them. On the other hand, they just really ass-fucked the difficulty balance so terribly that I walked away confused and frustrated when I played the American PlayStation version of this game.
Yes.
8 days ago.
The manual actually, I think, has an interview with Vic himself explaining why the changes were made.
Yeah, Vic
I believe. I have to look at my copy. And and he said he made it harder because there's all these really cool systems and mechanics that you don't need to actively engage with in the game, plus the overpowered weapons. And it's like, that's fair. On the other hand, because of the changes to the gameplay, you have to play it conservatively anyway. What were really cool systems that could have been, maybe expanded upon, just become kind of noise at that point, because you basically just have to play it very conservatively.
Yeah, to sort of, at Snarb's urging, I then tried the Japanese version, which I did end up liking more and getting farther into. Except the fact that I now couldn't read anything was also pissing me off, so...
Yeah, no one has taken the US PlayStation text and bolted on top of the Japanese version yet, and I lament that so much.
That fucking blows.
I understand not maybe translating the Saturn version, even though that's the superior home port of the game, but...
Yeah.
I still don't understand why no one has at least attempted that. Although it does have... Okay, the US version does have some other changes to it. It does have actual proper loading screens with really cool graphics on it. I will give it that. Some of the other presentation, I think, has been improved. Like, they upscaled the intro and possibly the ending movie as well. So there's been positive changes to the visual stylings. You'd have to make a Franken version for it to be the best game, basically.
Absolutely. But yeah, the thing about it's like I accidentally kept hitting the triangle button when I was playing the US version, which changes your polarity so that Mirage becomes silhouette, reversing your directional properties, but it really takes a huge piss out on working designs. Nice word, nice.
That's an actual thing, yes.
Oh yeah, no, right, no, that's right. They are basically unfucking the fuckery that working designs did with the games they released. That's excellent. Yes. Really respect that. But yeah, the most busted weapon in the game might be Gratoni. He's like your weapons are represented by these little like familiars, scrimblos that
the little parasites, as they're known. Yes, I love that.
Oh, parasites. And like Gratoni, who's like this blue fire dragon guy, just has you shoot out this ridiculously powerful laser that also has full range, and you can just use this without any penalty in the Japanese version, but in the West it like blows out your meter like within 5 seconds, and like what's even the fucking point? My god, really, you're just best off sticking with your sort of default weapon in the US version because it's the one that consumes the least energy. That's very boring and it kind of sucks, but like
I think you can also use Pride, which is the scythe boomerangs. I think that one actually doesn't consume too much ammo. Those were my two biggest ones I remember using.
Yeah,
I think I used the bomb as well, as you noted. That's another good one.
Yeah, indeed. So, I can definitely recognize that Silhouette Mirage has a lot of personality in it. I remember Snarboo pointing out that a spoilery character near the end of the game kind of looks like beloved modern-day Scrimblow Neko Arc from the series.
It's just a weird-looking... It's like, why is Neko Arc in this game before Tsukahime? How did that happen, Treasure? Also, shout-outs to the basic attack in this game being completely ripped off for Cuphead, because China shoots her guns the same way they fire their guns in Cuphead. It's just the finger blaster, and I love it.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's a good... I mean, Cuphead is very clearly inspired by Treasure's work, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was a nod to it.
I wonder if the clown boss in Cuphead is a reference to this, because he's blue on one side and red on the other.
Holy shit, Bette the Clown, you're right! Wow, you might be right. Yeah, that's a good point. I thought he was just a nod to Gil from Street Fighter 3, but, that's probably even more on point with what it is.
Yeah, I think it's a safe bet. But we've spent plenty of time on Salt Mirage. Braunle, did you ever play it at all?
Apologies.
Again, that's one I never did play.
Okay.
I was aware of it, but never played it.
That being the case, you and I are going to take the point on the last game we're covering tonight. So we've seen, Braunle's icon here is Gunstar Red from Gunstar Heroes. We've had Mike and Dynamite Hetty. We've had Snarboo and his character from Silhouette Mirage. But what about mine? And for that matter, all these little kitty cats, as Song called them. Well, we're going to talk about Radiant Silvergun now. That, man, that was the
Beloved.
game. Yes, that convinced me to buy a Saturn in the first place.
Yes. Absolutely.
I remember going out to the local malls where they actually had Saturn games in stock, and they were actually carrying imports in a couple of them, and 2 places had Radiant Silvergun. You bought one copy, I bought the other.
Now, how did you get that to play on a U.S. Saturn? Did it have any kind of copy protection, or did you have to have a Japanese Saturn?
Actually, I ended up getting a SD key because they sold those there too.
Now, what is that exactly?
It's basically a cartridge that goes into the RAM slot on the back of the Saturn and makes everything region free.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was.
Do you remember they had a flea market? I remember I had gotten a black American Saturn from a flea market, and then I was able to play that on there, not knowing about the electrical issues between Japan and America. And the Saturn I have now, I have a converter that I had also purchased off of eBay, I think, for that, since they run on different electrical. But I don't think I can't remember how I played mine. But I know I played it, though.
You might have had an SD key, too, because, like I said, they were actually selling them at the Electronics Boutique or whatnot that were carrying the games.
Yeah.
So, cause I bought one. I bought a couple other Japanese games as well when I found them, like Bulk Slash. You know, that was the other game that really convinced me that buying a Saturn was a good thing.
I remember that. Now, what type of game was that?
That was like a 3D...
I remember the name.
It was by Hudson Soft. It was like a 2D game in 3D is one of the best ways I could put it. Basically, you had this mech and you could transform into a jet and stuff, and you had to go around. They recently translated it into English, actually. Complete voice acting.
I still need to actually do that with the copy of Bulk Slash I found is translated. So
yeah, well, we'll get to that one another time. It's not by Treasure, but it's definitely worth talking about. But Radiant Silvergun, it's like from the very beginning of that all the way through the final boss, it was just like my jaw was to the floor with the stuff Treasure was making the Saturn do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have to absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm. So it was just.
Sorry. I don't mean to change the subject real quick, but I'm looking at Bulk Slash. I remember this now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
That was excellent game. Yeah. But yeah, Radiant Silvergun, just from that opening, it seemed like really lighthearted, but then it got really serious. And the ending was just like a real gut punch. And it's like you basically you get to the last boss, at least what you think is the last boss, and then when you defeat it, and it's still one of the coolest final bosses I've ever seen in a game, then you have to survive like 1 minute versus the stone like, that's what it's called.
Yep, that's right.
And it just shoots like wave after wave after crazy wave of bullets at you. And once you survive that, then everything just explodes and your ships crash. Everyone else is gone. You're in the past. And your little robot that was on board your ship, Creator, he'd actually taken DNA from the 2 pilots of the Silverguns. They're Buster, which is my avatar, and I think Rihanna was the girl's name, and cloned them. And was basically doing this until he just finally shut down from, being active for years and aging. And he's like, he shuts down and basically dies, and just then the clones wake up, and it's implied they're Adam and Eve at that point.
Yeah.
And it's just a real gut punch of an ending. But getting there, man, what a ride.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Looking back at it now, it's like, how did I ever do that?
I know. I'm still trying to do it. All right. Let's see. Who should talk about this next? Mike or Snarboo?
I think Snarb was actually going to say something, so...
Well,
he
yeah, it
has
was
to
kind
go
of just an
first.
offhand comment. If that's actually what the storyline is like, that reminds me a lot of this anime I caught on the Saturday morning animes that you used to do on the Sci-Fi Channel called Gall Force, because it has a very similar premise to that with
Oh,
an
yeah,
Adam and
Gall
Eve
Force.
twist at the ending.
Mhm.
It's actually pretty fun. I need to see it again to see if it still holds up. But in any case, today was the very first day I have ever played this game, and I am kicking myself for not having played it. But on the other
You
hand,
really should.
one,
Yeah.
Saturn emulation has only just gotten to a point where it's full speed. I can actually run them
True.
properly on my this little gaming laptop I got. It's actually like 5 years old now, but I can actually run it really well. And also, even having said that, it still doesn't run perfectly. The Beatitude for Gains thing, where it says it's downloading data before the bosses, glitches out even in this emulator that otherwise runs Saturn games perfectly. So they were definitely doing things with the system that are kind of mind blowing. The game has hardly any slowdown. And I don't know what to say about it other than I really wish I had gotten to it much, much sooner. Because I wait, what? Sorry.
I was going to say that it's actually become a lot more available recently. It was re-released for the...
That's right. Yes, it did get a Switch release. I was
Yep.
just reading that today, and once I have access to my Switch again, I will need to actually grab that. But
And
I
it-
kind of lament playing... Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, in between the original release and the Switch release, it also got released for the Xbox Live Arcade back in like 2011.
It did, and I never had a 360, so I never got to experience it that way either. And that version has enhancements that I believe are carried over to the Switch port. I was reading about it, and I'm like, man, how did I miss the Switch port? But this game was really overshadowed by Ikaruga. I played Ikaruga first. I had heard that this was the prequel to it, but I never got a chance to play it until now, and I don't know why, because I was blown away when I first played. It's like, wow, this is like Ikaruga, but good.
Thank you!
There's all these. There's the weapon system, so you get 3 weapons, and then depending on which 2 keys you hold, you actually get different attacks. You get up to 6 weapons. Then there's a freaking laser beam sword. And once you figure out what that's for and what it does, once you figure out how all these interconnected weapons work, once I realized that, hey, the Saturn version actually lets you grind up your power up levels to make it easier to get through the game. It all just clicks into place. And you're like, man, this is like smooth as butter. It's like, what have I been missing out this whole time?
Exactly. Which, just now I can go ahead and address the kitty cats, quote unquote. They're actually dogs. But you see them, they pop up as each person gets highlight. And, oh, look, there's all of them. That is actually in Radiant Silvergun. You can actually use the homing laser. And if you just happen to aim it at the right spot, it's like nowhere to lock onto something. And then a couple hits, and all of a sudden this little dog appears and goes, ruff, ruff, and then it's like bonus points. And
It really looks so much like a cat, though. It's crazy.
It's the Trouble Bruin paradox all over again.
Exactly.
It's a treasure game, all right. God damn.
But they even have a little doghouse in the options menu of the Saturn game where you can see how many you found and what rank you are.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now.
Yeah, I think
It's a...
currently in my save game, I'm ranked as a feeder.
It's like how Seibu Kaihatsu's mascot Miklas pops up in the Raiden games if you shoot at the right place for bonus points, but they make an actual sort of collectathon mini game out of this. That's pretty cute.
Speaking of the Miklas, is it just me or does the stone look kind of like the Miklas? Because one's a red diamond crystal thing and the other is a yellow diamond crystal thing.
Oh yeah. Seibu, the Chrysanians, I think, are the bad guys in Raiden, and like the final boss is like some sort of giant machine powered by an ominous red diamond, which may or may not be the enemy leader. Interesting to consider. Maybe some people from there went on to work for Treasure. I have no idea. Anyway, Snarboo, do you have anything more to say about RSG?
No, just that I need to play it more. Also, it's hard, but it's hard in a good way. Like, I feel like I could get better at it rather than your brain is not puzzle enough to figure out the majesty of the Rubik's Cube that is the enigma, that is the riddle of Ikaruga.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like Ikaruga, but
Yeah,
Radiant
yeah.
Silvergun is definitely the superior game. No question about that.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean,
that's
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I agree. Ikaruga is good, but it's not that good.
Yeah, I do like Ikaruga also, but it is easily to shoot 'em ups what Chrono Trigger is to RPGs. It's like some people are just so enamored with it that they act like that the genre begins and ends with it. And
He's doing that in agreement with you. Use it to power your hatred for Ikaruga.
it hyped me up too much. I can't focus. Anyway, but we're not talking about Ikaruga now. It's going to be in a potential sequel stream.
Exactly.
But no, Radiant. Yes, what Snarv said about Radiant Silvergun, I'm not sure how much more I can add to that. There is sort of a point system where enemies come in red, blue, and yellow colors, and if you manage to shoot, like, keep them in groups of 3, how you shoot them, you get a lot more points, and this, I believe, builds up your weapon experience faster. I'm not very good at it, but it does kind of sort of predicate the shooting black and white enemies in Ikaruga somewhat.
It's
also
a chaining
has combo system.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally blow at it, but it is pretty neat. It's in there, and it does force you to, well, not necessarily force you, but it does encourage you to try and be more discerning with your shots instead of just holding on to whatever weapon you're firing at the time and just keep on auto fire as you are encouraged to do with most other shmups.
Now,
Also,
before you go on,
ahead.
Mike,
Yes.
Rex brought up a very good point about the GameCube cover of Ikaruga. It's got that
right.
terrible IGN quote on it. Like, our
frothing
frothing demand
demand
for this game increases. It's like, okay, it's well-intentioned, but stupid.
It is immensely stupid, yes.
That was the 2000s for you, though.
Yeah.
That's just
I mean,
the way it was.
I guess it's good that any shmup got the attention it did in the early 2000s at a time when the genre was a good deal more dormant than it was in the 20th century, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
But, like, really, Ikaruga wouldn't be what it is without Radiant Silvergun laying the bones out. And maybe it's not too fair to compare the games, though, since Ikaruga is sort of deliberately a relatively breezy experience. Radiant Silvergun is long for a shmup, and there are 2 modes on the home console version, Arcade and Saturn. This was initially an arcade game that ran on the Sega Titan hardware, which I think is more or less like the arcade equivalent to the Saturn's hardware, if I'm not mistaken.
It was also Treasure's first arcade game.
You're right. They didn't do too many, did they? The arcade version is relatively shorter. The Saturn version, I think, is the one that allows you to specifically build up your experience over repeats. It also has more bosses added in. It also has cutscenes and voice acting from the characters. I can't understand a lick of it, and I don't know too much about the story beats aside from what Dyer described, but it is nice little garnish, if I do say so. And also, in the arcade version, there's a point where you have to either pick level 2 or 4. Also, you start at level 3. There's a reason for that, because all levels are chronologically sorted. So, level 2 is actually a flashback to what was happening before the stone-like, spoilers, 3, 2, 1, apparently wiped out all of humanity somehow.
Pretty much.
That's the intro, actually.
Yeah,
It's
right.
implied.
It's implied that this stone-like is God and it's pissed.
Yeah, that is nuts. That is
Very Evangelion.
I wanted to say that, but I almost didn't want to. But yeah, there is some Evangelion influence in this game. There's no question about that. For better or worse, it's much better than Evangelion, though. I will say that.
I've never seen a single minute of that.
Hot take.
I've
It's okay.
seen an episode of Evangelion. I was not thrilled.
Song and I have seen all of it. We were mixed.
Isn't the ending one of those kind of
oh
like,
no.
what the
Oh,
hell
no,
was
no,
that?
no.
It depends on what version you're talking about. There's
Jesus
different
fucking
levels of
Christ!
it.
Do not get me started on End of Evangelion. It's on stream.
I think the ending where everybody claps and congratulates the protagonist is the real ending. Let's be
That's the better
real.
ending. That's the ending I fucking prefer. Jesus Christ.
Congratulations, Shinjo.
Anyway, but yeah, in the arcade version, you have to choose either level 2 or level 4. In the Saturn version, you have to play both. I think the choice only affects which one you play first is all. And like I said, there are several more bosses than what you fight, so it is an overall longer experience. It is Radiant Silvergun Plus. And, while he's not the hardest boss, I do think that the final normal boss you fight, Ziga as it's known as, is really one of the coolest fucking bosses, not just in a treasure game, not just in a shmup, but in like anything. It is a large red homunculus, something in the shape of a man that like just runs down all sorts of different angles and like has 4 different phases, and it's just
even used Guile's flash kick on you at one point.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's just so crazy, even though it's not the final boss. As we hinted at, the final boss is actually the Stone-like itself, presumably the creator of everything. And here's the twist. Snarboo, you were asking where level 1 is in this game, right? Before the stream?
Yes, I did.
After level 6, which is where you fight Ziga, and apparently the end of time itself, you then get yoinked back all the way to the beginning of the universe, and that is level 1, where you face the creator. From the very beginning of everything. But you can't fight it, you just have to survive, and it throws out a lot of shit at you, to say the least. It is very bullet helly.
It's a good thing your hitbox is so small at that point.
Yes. Dyer and I are not normally huge, Rob and I are not normally huge on bullet hells, but, Radiant Silvergun is still really awesome besides that, so.
Yeah.
Although, it is just amazing game, goddamn.
Yes, I have to say, there's one point when Ziga makes his first appearance, with like that energy wave is coming down over him. It almost looks like he's wearing a skirt.
Oh, it's possible. Hey, I'm seeing the moment. Yes. And also, like that weird Beatitude for Gains thing. Every single boss has 3 nonsense phrases that flash on the screen. I really don't know what they mean at all.
I think it describes the attacks. I think that's a callback to Gunstar Heroes because we did mention about that.
Yeah.
The bosses all have their moves listed, and one of the bosses has Love Dancing.
Hey, you're right. That's a good point.
The minion, not the minion shelter. It has some kind of name.
I think Ziga's is the best, though, because the Beatitude for Gains, 1, be praying, 2, be praying, 3, be praying.
That is simultaneously hilarious and very intimidating.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man, what a hell of a great game, though.
No kidding. Like
I will say the final boss, the way you describe it, sounds kind of like the final boss for Alpha Mission 2, which is also a pretty cool final boss for a top-down shmup. Because it's this very detailed, highly well-animated like mech that looks like it's made out of wood or something, and it looks like a skeleton. It's just really cool, but this sounds like that dialed up to 11, essentially.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to say almost on an objective level that maybe Radiant Silvergun is Treasure's magnum opus. I mean, certainly not hurting is that the great Hitoshi Sakamoto, the same guy who composed fucking Final Fantasy Tactics, is this game's composer. It's just a breathtaking soundtrack. The aesthetics are just so on point.
The return
I just
theme,
can't gush.
I can't listen to that enough.
Absolutely.
It's just such an epic theme.
Yeah. I just built up from how Rob described Radiant Silvergun, the OPCFG, that this was a real holy grail worth tracking down. Anyone want to guess what I paid for it back in the day?
Probably not quite as cheap as myself or Braunle paid for it, but close.
Yeah.
How much did you guys pay for it? I'm going to hate you, whatever it is.
I think
$248.
I'm
What was
pretty
that?
sure. I think
$248.
Wait, 248, you said.
Yeah, it was a import.
I don't know
Wow.
where you bought your copy from, but I got my copy at like Electronics Boutique, and it was only 50 or 60.
Oh.
Are you talking about? Okay, I thought you were talking about. Okay, yeah, I'm talking about recently, with like what,
No,
a year or so ago.
No, none of that. None of that. No, I'm talking about when we
okay.
got it originally.
Oh, you know what? I don't remember, but I remember getting. Oh, where? I don't remember.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure the two EBs in our area each had a copy. I got one, you got the other.
And you paid how much?
It was like $50 or $60. You know. So I'm pretty sure you got the same price.
It makes sense that it would be the same price.
Yeah.
Well, shit, because I paid precisely triple that. $150 back in the day for this fucking game, and it was worth every penny.
Do you still own it?
Yes, I do.
should hope
Although
so.
it has finally been re-released on some modern consoles, so Jesus Christ, that was way overdue. But and also it is also relatively easier to emulate. I have actually validly played its arcade version in MAME. But like for a while there, it was almost like it was one of several other games. I think it was this, Gradius Gaiden, the obscure Kazekiri on the PC Engine, and one more that Rondo of Blood, of course, right.
Yeah.
That I sort of saw it as like the holy grails of of Japanese import gaming that we just didn't get over here. And I'm glad I tracked down every one of them, even if eBay was a pain to navigate back then. But
and you will get to you will get to read Mike's story about how he acquired all of these games in the upcoming book, Digital Archaeology.
Absolutely. Wink.
Hey, there's plenty of good stories in that one. So when it finally comes out, you'll get a chance to see it for yourself. Of course, you've had a sneak peek if you already saw the 2014 version of Memoirs of a Virtual Caveman, because that story was in there too. But it's out of print now, and good luck finding a copy. So I think anyway, unless anyone has anything else they want to say about Radiant Silvergun, I think it's about time we wrap it up. Anybody?
All right.
Braunle?
Is now the time we play a Crosswalk of Love for Bette, because that would be the time.
That's all I wanted to say. It's great. It will forever, ever be etched in my mind as one of the greatest shooters ever.
Yep.
No question.
All right. So we will pick up with a part 2 at some point, in which we'll cover stuff like Bangayo and Ikaruga and Mischief Makers. Yes. And even other contract work like Sylvie the Lost Planet. And we may have to do a double one here for Gradius 5, because they did do that. But we have a Gradius stream coming up. We're going to talk about that on. Yep. As far as what the next stream is going to be next week, I think we had planned with Kate we were going to do the sequel to the Cute Retro games.
Nice.
I think.
Nice.
But we have to find a way to schedule that Gradius stream in here at some point, because that really needs to be done. I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about Gradius. I'm pretty sure Mike, Braunle, you both want to talk about Gradius. And Mr. Matthews.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. We've got a lot of Gradius to talk about. And Salamander. And if we have time, Parodius.
Yay.
Yep.
And in your case, Solar Assault, which I will probably never get to play ever. At least not in the form it's intended to, you bastards.
Hey, we got lucky. Not only did they have 2 cabs, but no one else was playing them.
Yeah.
So I took one, Braunle took the other.
Right time.
Yeah, it was exactly what it was. Right place at the right time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Disney Quest in the late 90s. Hey, you know, I don't think we ever made it out of that alcove to go ahead and check out the other stuff. We were too busy playing that all
we
night.
didn't. we didn't.
It's like, found Solar Assault. It's right here. I'm not moving.
Right.
But we do have some other streams coming up too in the near future. There's going to be, besides Gradius stream, there's a couple of Castlevania streams I'm getting organized for. We definitely have a Splatterhouse stream coming up at some point. Plus, we're going to do streams on the Sega Genesis, on the Super NES, and so on and so forth from there. But just we also have the second part of the RPG stream to do, and yeah, we're booked pretty solid for the next few months, I'd say. So just keep an eye out on my Twitter to see any announcements, and if you don't have that, it's right down below, along with links to Mike and Snarboo's channels. And once I have a link from Braunle for his YouTube channel, I'll go ahead and put that there too.
Cool. Thank you.
And yes, Sharon, Gradius 5. I own it. It's a good game. They were up to Gradius 5 back in like 2004.
Did we get a Gradius 6? I don't believe we did we?
No, the closest we got was Gradius Rebirth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So, anyway, I think with that, we're going to go ahead and end it for the night. So, we will see you all next time. So, everybody have a fun.
All right, then.
Have a good one.
All right, take it easy.
Yep, you too.